Okay, we're going to get started, folks. Good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Coventry Town Council will come to order at 6 p.m. Roll call, Vice President Ludwig.
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Here.
Mrs. Lima.
Here.
Mrs. Shockley.
Here.
President Dixon here. Vice President Ludwig, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and describe the emergency evacuation plan. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
The exit is behind the public seating to the left.
Item C2, council meeting minutes. Madam Clerk, did you receive any corrections?
No, I did not.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for September 19, 2022?
I'll make a motion.
Reference pages 5 to 6.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call. Vice President Ludwig.
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Yes.
Mrs. Lima.
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley.
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. May I have a motion and second to table item D1? Mr. Gorham has recommended the following. I respectfully suggest that consideration be given to continuing item D1 of the agenda because there is no need to issue a license until the applicant first obtains a special use permit from the zoning board of review for the use of the land at the location specified 2260 Victory Highway. It is my understanding that the zoning board of review postponed hearing on the special use permit application of Frogmore Camping at the last zoning board meeting. Thus, there is no need to decide their license application at the meeting scheduled for October 11th. Also, the application consists of one page. It is not signed and has almost no information whatsoever about the nature of the campground operation. It is to be undertaken if approved. Requesting more detail might be a good idea. So may I have a motion and a second to postpone the item?
President Dixon,
Yes.
Can we just double check before we motion and second that? So this says 6:30 for this part of the agenda. I just want to double check. Do we need to do that when we reconvene?
I think you can amend the
still in-
agenda at any
We're
point.
still in public session.
Well,
Okay, I'll second the motion then to table it.
Mrs. Lima, did you have a comment?
yes, if we could amend the motion to table D1 and make item H1 the new D1. I'd like to amend that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table D1 and to move up H1 to its position. That would mean that some people who might, okay, first of all, do I have a motion and a second? Yes. It is my understanding that people might expect the public hearing to occur later in the evening. Will that be an issue? I'm just bringing.
No.
Just to clarify, the public hearing will happen after executive session though.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, no issue. People have
No.
any issue? Okay. Roll call vote. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. May I have a motion second to adjourn into executive session at 6:05 p.m.
I'll
with
make
the
a motion.
following. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 424652, work session pertaining to collective bargaining agreement between the town of Coventry and local 3484, Council 94, A.F.S.C.M.E. A motion and a second, please.
Motion.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mr. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Members of the public, the council will return at approximately 6:30 p.m. May I have a motion and second to adjourn from executive session at 6:35 PM?
So moved.
Thank you, May.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Vice President Ludwig.
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Yes.
Mrs. Lima.
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley.
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Members of the public, the council met in executive session for the following: closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465Q, work session pertaining to collective bargaining agreement between the town of Coventry and local 3484, Council 94, A.F.S.C.M.E. A discussion took place and no votes were taken. May I have a motion and second to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Vice President Ludwig.
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Yes.
Mrs. Lima.
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley.
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. We're moving to Agenda H, public hearing for discussion and/or action. May I have a motion and second to open the public hearing for the following: public hearing for discussion and/or action of proposed amendments to Town Code Charter 191 sewers, amending those regulations governing the use of public and private sewers and drains, private sewage disposal, the installation and connection of building sewers, and the discharge of waters and waste into the public sewer system, and providing penalties for violation thereof. May I have a motion and second?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote to open public hearing. Vice President Ludwig.
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Yes.
Mrs. Lima.
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley.
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Public hearing is now open. Members of the public, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand, be recognized by the president. Come to the podium, state your name and address. Your comments are restricted to the subject of the public hearing, which is the ordinance relating to sewers. And if there are members of the public on Zoom and you would like to speak, please raise your hand in the chat function. The IT administrator will let you in. Please state your name and address. Members of the public, is there anyone here who would like to speak? Yes, please come forward.
Jerry Knuckles, 21 Beach Street, Coventry, Rhode Island. As the got a skill set unbelievable. As the president of the Lake Tioga Association, I've been involved with the lake for a long, long time. And as we moved along for years and years and years with some type of promise of getting sewers, I'm finally seeing some direction from this council to have a reasonable approach that people can afford. I don't have the full reading of that document. I was assuming you all were going to read some of it in case other people on Zoom would like to speak about it. Is that possible to have you read any of that?
There's a lot of proposed revisions, so we could talk about some of the highlights of it,
Sure.
but it is also posted on the town's website in the agenda in full. But Jamie, I don't know if you want to just go through the highlights of the proposed revisions.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. LeBlanc speak in 1 second.
Sure.
So if you have any comments you'd like to make first, or you just want to have a summary of the ordinance?
Could I come back up after, or is it a one-shot deal?
No, it is not a one-shot deal. But as mentioned, if you go to the calendar function on the website, and then you look at the agenda for this evening, you'll see agenda and agenda packet, and it will be there.
Right. I've read through a lot of it. I'm not
Okay.
sure that people who are listening, who are not here tonight because there's a school open house tonight.
Mhm.
I don't know if you realize that. And so there are people who may be getting on and would like to hear some of it. But I'll just speak my mind on it. My understanding is that one of the things you're looking at is a $15,000 charge for people to attach, and that does not include any of the infrastructure that goes into your building or in the building itself that you own or rent. And I think that is financially feasible for many people. The numbers that were cranked out earlier being $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to attach to sewers or to have sewers run by your house is an unbelievably unrealistic thing to ask people to pay. They just cannot do that. And I think this proposal that you all have come up with is a great approach. And I'm hoping, really hoping, that it's going to pass and that we can get sewers in many of the areas that affect Lake Tioga's environmentally sensitive areas. I have been testing and been involved with the lake for so many years that I'm just really happy to see some direction coming from you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This
Point of information, Ms. Dixon, if I could just ask a question of the,
Just a moment, please. This is in our package just for reference. It's on page 67 to 107. So if you look for the reference, you'll find it
Thank
there.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any comments? Mrs. Lima?
Mr. Narkowitz, the team from Fuss and O'Neill had come to a special meeting, monthly meeting of Tioga Lake Association in late August. I believe they asked people who attended, I think there may be 35, 40 people were there. If the sewer assessments were capped at $15,000, how many would be willing to tie on? Do you remember how many hands went up in the room?
Yeah, I'm going to elaborate upon that a little bit more. They asked it two ways. Would people in this audience be interested in attaching to the sewers? And without a quantifier. And people were kind of concerned. And I asked for what would be the rate to attach. And they floated the idea that it would be somewhere around 15,000. And how many people would be interested in attaching if the attaching fee was $15,000? It was a unanimous decision. All 35 or 40 people there raised their hands saying they would love to have sewers. There wasn't a single denier in the group.
Okay, there is a difference between sewer assessment and the rate. So
Yes.
we need to clarify that to make sure that people understand. And I'll ask one of the members of the sewer subcommittee to please just clarify the difference between sewer assessment,
Sure.
et cetera. There's a tie-in fee and there's also the rate that would be charged by the town for the water that is being used through
Right.
the system. Okay. Mr. LeBlanc, could you just clarify the difference between sewer assessment and the rate? Can we talk about sewer rate?
Well, first, I want to thank Mr. Narkowitz for his comments. And second, he had asked for kind of a high level, just so anybody listening knows what the high level changes are.
Okay, just about Mr.
So I just want to kind of go in order.
I would love that. I would actually love it more for the people who are listening, who
Okay,
might not
fine.
have the same expertise.
Okay, we have a member of the sewer subcommittee, two of them. So Mr. LeBlanc, could you
So
summary, please?
Sure. So in my opinion, there's four, what I would call major changes to the sewer ordinance in this first revision that we're discussing tonight. The first one is in chapter 191-14 titled Assessment, section A1. This revision actually is making the sewer ordinance in line with state legislation, which was 2022 S2208. What that state legislation did was it was specific to Coventry. It said that anybody assessed with a sewer assessment in Coventry could have the ability to pay over 30 years, not just 20. That would obviously reduce the monthly payment for homeowners. So that clearly would help alleviate the pain of the sewer assessment. So that's change number one. Change number two, which I believe is the most important. Again, it's chapter 191-14 assessments, section D, 1A. It relates to residential assessments. This change would say that no sewer assessment should exceed $15,000. So gone are the days of the 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. There was one person on Hazard Street that got a $62,000 assessment. So that would be what I would call the most significant change. Number
The difference between assessment. expenditure chain assessment. We want to make sure.
Sure. So that 15,000 is related to the sewer assessment. There's a lot of costs that go along with sewers. You have the assessment, then you have the usage fee once you're tied in. Then you have, not only do you get the assessment, but that doesn't include the cost that you have to pay someone to tie your house into the sewer line. That can be $3,500 to $5,000. Then there's the cost to decommission your septic system that you currently have. There's arguments that you can use it as like a rain something or other, but I mean, if it's a working septic, nobody wants to destroy that and put a hole in it and then fill it with rain. And then there's the interest on a sewer assessment. Now that has been challenged over the years, and this town used to charge 6%, but state legislation passed in 2021 actually said that the town can only charge 0.05% more than what they get the funds for that specific project. So it averages to like 3.5%. So there's a lot of costs that go along, but this first revision is speaking just to the assessment. The third change that I want to call out is, again, chapter 191-14. It's paragraph J. It actually requires the town to send a certified mail to any homeowner on any street that is selected for streets 2 years in advance, for sewers 2 years in advance. That was actually one of the Rhode Island State Auditor General's requests that we do, to not only notify any homeowner that might be impacted by this large financial impact, it lets them come to meetings, learn about it, and then also plan financially for said project. And then the last one, anywhere in the sewer ordinance where it references the DPW director, that would get removed and it would be replaced with town engineer. Town engineer makes all the sewer decisions, comes to our sewer subcommittee meetings, is heavily involved in the sewer system itself. So that's why that recommendation was made. And I just want to say that the sewer subcommittee also approved all of these changes. So I think that's everything, President Dixon.
Could you also speak to the deferred for 10 years if you already have? I think it's section B. I have it on page 95.
Sure. That's not a change though. That's already in there.
Some of it has been crossed out. So, okay, could you explain that provision?
Sure. If sewers go down your street and you have a septic system, you get a letter of conformity from the state that says that you put a brand new septic in. Whatever that date is on that letter, you have 10 years from that date to defer your sewer assessment and connect to the line.
Mm-hmm.
But that was previously in the ordinance.
Okay, I just saw some crossed out areas, so I just wanted you to mention that because I think it's an important provision too. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else you want to point out? Those are the major.
Those are the major ones.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions you have?
No, I'm impressed I can't use those words that I want to say. I'm really impressed that you guys have taken this direction. I think it speaks well for saving Lake Tioga, which is probably one of the nicest little public spots we have in this town. So,
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the Deputy Finance Director has a comment.
Yes.
Please come to the podium, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Brian Hartnett. I'm at 216 Hopkins Hill Road. I'm currently Deputy Finance Director. And
excuse me, please no talking in the audience, please. Thank you.
My troubling aspect of this particular item is the reverse welfare element of it. Meaning that if you were a poor single mom or dad and you're just barely making your mortgage payments and you're more than likely to live in a 2-bedroom home if you just get on the lower level in Coventry. If I was the owner of the New England Patriots and I had billions of dollars, I would have a 10-bedroom home in Coventry, probably if I live in Coventry. And as I understand it, the amount you're going to pay on the assessment is based on the number of bedrooms. Okay, where I come from, Massachusetts, it's based on linear feet, but the same idea, a smaller linear feet, the smaller, poorer the person, more than likely, the less number of bedrooms, more than likely, the poorer the person, and vice versa. You have 10 bedrooms, you have fewer dollars. And my point being that a poorer person would have just as much trouble paying, say, $8,000 on a sewer assessment as somebody who had quite a bit of bedrooms. This is like a reverse welfare, where the richer people, not 100%, but in general, are getting the benefit. Of course, there's always something exception to every rule. You could have a rundown house and have 6 bedrooms, and vice versa, a mansion with 1 bedroom. But the premise of it does lend itself to the option that the poorer people are not getting a break, and the richer people are. And, you know, if it was some sort of income limitation, I would this be more palatable to me. But something like that would probably have to be state funded, whereby if you put in the sewer system, you only made $50,000 a year, you would get a $2,000 tax break or something like that. Something like that would be a much better plan than something like this that does help out richer people than poorer people in general. Because, as I said, there is the possibility that it could go the other way. The poor person gets the break. But I think the way it's set up, it goes for the whole, it goes the other way. That's just my opinion as a resident. And I guess the second point of view is, if I was getting my sewer put in and it costs the town $30,000 to go in front of my house, and you're going to cap it at 15, the taxpayers of the town will be paying the $15,000 extra. And I don't know what it costs to put a sewer line. I assume millions. And if you assume, I'm going to make a number up, totally made up number, that overall this is a 40% break for all sewer ratepayers, then if it costs millions, that's 40% of millions that the town residents will have to pay in their taxes. It's just that I'm just presenting this as a resident, not as an official town personnel policy.
Thank you so much for your comments. Are there any?
Can I speak to that comment, please?
This is a public hearing, and I would like to get comments from the public first.
The previous person, we were going back and forth, but sure.
Okay. Yes, would you like to come forward, state your name and address, please?
Thank you. My name is Kevin Prout. I live at 23 Beach Street. I'm honored to be Jerry's neighbor. I have a septic system that precedes my moving in 36 years ago. It needs to be replaced right now, but there's no way I'm going to spend $40,000 on a system thinking that I may have a septic field installed at any time right now. Luckily, I have 2 daughters that live on the lake right now, one on Beach Street, one on Harrington. In 2017, 2 days after my first daughter bought, the system was closed down completely. She was really left in the lurch, has a cesspool that needs to be replaced. My other daughter on Harrington right now, I'm building a house for her. She's putting a $45,000 septic system in. So there's the dichotomy there. A civilized society needs to provide for the safety of their citizenship. Sewers are the way to go. So I please beg you to consider this septic system for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak? Yes.
Lisa Castelli, 15 Chopin Street. I just want to say I'm on the sewer subcommittee and I'm in favor for the $15,000 assessment cap. I think it'll be good for everybody and you'd be more likely to get it. I just put a new septic system in my house and it cost me $14,000. If I knew sewers were coming up my road and it was going to cost me $15,000 plus the fees, I would have waited for that. I'd much rather have the sewers. So it's comparable, I feel, to putting a new septic system in. I would have waited if I knew I was going to pay that amount. But in my area, they were at the 20,000 up to the 65,000 range. So that's why I went ahead and put the septic in. So I would like to see this.
Thank you.
Tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Costelli. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, please come forward.
Loris Ferrone, 64 Hazard Street. And I don't know what I missed because I didn't know you were moving this up in the agenda. But I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of Jamie and Hillary's proposal to cap it at 15,000. I know if it was going to come by my house and I had to pay 40 to 60, I'd probably end up losing my house. So I just wanted to say that. And I also think that we should give homeowners a couple of years a notice that you're going to do that. So people that can't afford it have the time to try to figure out how they're going to do it, maybe get a loan or just put money away or whatever they need to do. And I just want to know, if you were to go by somebody's house and they absolutely no way in the world could come up with this kind of money to do it, what happens to that person? Do they lose their home because they can't afford the sewers going by their house? Like, what would happen to that person or that family? And that's all I wanted to know.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? And we'll respond to some of the questions that people have asked. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak? Mr. Horton, please bring in the first person. Mr. Hobart, please state your name and address, please.
Good evening. It's Ray Hobart, 21 Dixie Road. So I just want to mention, I strongly support the cap for sewers. For me, it would greatly reduce any anxiety that I may or will have if they do come down my road, and knowing that the town doesn't have a blank check with my money, basically. So I think it's a really great idea, and I appreciate the council bringing it forward. And also, I think it would be a really great thing for the town as far as the water quality goes at Briar Point Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to speak? Please raise your hand in the chat function. Do we have another person? Please bring that person in. Please state your name and address, please. Is this
From 209 Shore Drive,
and your name, please?
Anita Gill.
Anita Gill, thank you.
And yes, I just want to say that I definitely do approve of the $15,000 cap. I think it's a really good idea, especially for people that live around waterways in Coventry.
Do you have additional comments?
No, that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else on chat who would like to speak? I see no more hands. Is there anyone in the public here today who would like to make a comment? Yes.
Bradford Mayor, 360 Hope Furnace Road. I feel these ordinance proposed changes were well thought out. And I just feel that they're a step in the right the first step in the right direction to make sure the sewer program is equitable for all of Coventry. And I think they all warrant approval by the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, let us address one more person on chat. Please state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Diane Cowell, Kowal. I live at 97 Mohawk Street. I also own a home at 95 East Shore Drive. I wanted to just make a comment that I too am very supportive of the changes that you're recommending. The sewers have been a big contention when we moved to Coventry in 2003, to the lake, not to Coventry, to the lake in 2003. We were hoping that sewers would go in soon. And here we are almost 20 years later. So we're glad that things seem to be progressing in that direction. Even though both of our homes have up-to-date sewer systems that were very expensive to put in when we rebuilt our homes, we will immediately connect to the sewers when they come by. And we look forward to the day that happens. So again, I'd like to thank the council for considering these changes and strongly encourage you to pass them.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else would like to speak? Okay, Mr. LeBlanc, would you like to address the use of the Waterman Fisk Fund? We had a question about what happens if a person cannot afford the assessment.
So that was actually a question for the solicitor, not me, because the Waterman Fisk Fund wouldn't take 100% of the assessment.
Okay,
It just lowers some of the assessment, but it wouldn't give 100%.
no, it doesn't give 100%. Could, Mr. Gorham, would you please talk about the use of the Waterman Fisk Fund?
Yeah, just very generally, the Waterman Fisk Fund is a fund designed to help anyone in need of any type of service or anything else that the town does. The town council has broad discretion to create ordinances that allow people to receive assistance from the town. It's pretty well funded. I don't know its latest balance, but it's a large amount of money. It was donated by a gentleman by the name of Waterman and another family by the name of Fisk a long time ago. It's a large fund. So a couple of years ago, the town council, in light of some of the concerns about excessive sewer fees, used the fund to help people pay for their sewers. There's a long set of qualifications that have to be met and so forth. I don't think there's any problem with the fund, the way it's written, but the only thing I would say is that it was approved by the Attorney General. The Attorney General has complete jurisdiction over all charitable funds, and that includes the Waterman Fisk Fund. So in order to implement the program that is now offering assistance to people who need it for paying their sewer assessments, we went through a lengthy process to make sure, with the Attorney General, to make sure that we agreed that it was fair for the town to pay for assessments through the Waterman Fisk Fund. The big catch was the town is essentially paying itself on behalf of people who need the help. That was approved by the Attorney General. The only thing I'm not sure of is if the amount is changed. I don't know how many people are going to qualify for it because it's all based on ratios, and there's also a cap. I don't know it off the top of my head. Is it 200 or 100? 200,000. So I mean, in lowering the assessment, I can't see a problem. So I think the two can be reconciled. I don't think we have to go back to the Attorney General, but I think it would be a good idea just to let them know that we've done this. And with, if this passes, this new assessment scheme passes, I think we should at least let the Attorney General know about it because it was based on a different set of facts. The assessments really didn't have a limit when this was approved. And it may be that the Attorney General would say, I don't think the Attorney General would say this, but just think about it. We are now lowering the assessments to a level that make them far more affordable for everyone, whether you have the means to pay for it or not. And so I don't know if that means we have to make other adjustments with the fund. And again, because the Attorney General has plenary power over all charitable funds, I think it would make good sense to send it. Otherwise, just to send the changes and ask them if they have any concerns, keep it very brief. And they'll contact us if they do, the Attorney General's Trust Division. But I don't see any problem in doing this. So I think the two can be reconciled without any change to the Fisk program, the Waterman Fisk program for sewer assessments. It might not be used as much
Okay, so Mr. Gorham, could you work with Mr. Marchand to send off that letter to the Attorney General Trust Department, please, just to notify them based on your recommendation?
Yes, of
Thank you
course.
so much. Okay, and now, Mr. LeBlanc, you wanted to respond to a question that one of our residents, who also happens to be a deputy finance director here, but he was speaking as a resident. He raised a couple of issues. Could you please address
Sure.
his questions?
Tonight, we heard a lot of people in favor, and I think one person was against it. And I just want to provide a case study. It was Coventry Drive. Coventry Drive had a bunch of senior citizens who live on that street. I've been to 6 or 7 meetings on that street. They were going to get handed $30,000 to $40,000 sewer assessments. This actually would help all of them on that street. So I think the example provided was if you maybe went around Johnson's Pond with sewers or very influential areas with sewers. However, if you look at the sewer map where these sewers are going, they're not going in those areas. So the current ordinance without this change gives the town a blank check. They can go up streets with tons of ledge. The first proposal for a sewer line on Hazard Street could be $400,000, and it could net $2 million at the end of the day after all the drills are broken and after all the ledge took months to go through. And the town would have zero skin in the game. Currently, as written, every homeowner on that street would get nailed with it would take the $2 million divided by the number of homes, number of bedrooms, and that's what their assessments would be. They would run north of $60,000. So I 100% believe that the cap is necessary. And at the end of the day, we're paying for this sewer pipe to go by our street. But yet, if I move or wherever the street goes, wherever the sewer line goes, and those homeowners move, they don't get to take that line with them. So you're gifting that sewer line, the infrastructure, to the town at the end of the day. So I am 100% in support of this. It's the town's infrastructure that these homeowners are ultimately paying for. So I just wanted to give a rebuttal to his hypothetical.
That's fine. Thank you so much. Mrs. Shockley has a comment.
Thank you. So first, people have been saying cap a lot, and I am still concerned that on page 29, which is 95 on our packet, that it doesn't say cap, it says fixed. And that
There was an email to D'Agostino and Mr. Gorham specifically saying that I believe it was member Ludwig and yourself who asked for it to say not to exceed $15,000.
Perfect.
And that's what the ordinance needs to say.
Great. I also wanted to comment, just basing it on the fact that in order for everyone to be able to afford it, we have to bring it down for even those who could have afforded a higher amount. And personally, I think that's what town infrastructure, how it should work. You can't have one street paying for an entire sewer line on their own. Whenever roads are done in this town, we all pay for them. I'm a proponent for the schools. We all pay for the schools so that everyone can afford to go to good schools. So I think that is exactly how the town is supposed to work. That sometimes you do have to bring things down for those who can afford it, so that the ones who couldn't have afforded it before will be able to take advantage of this cleaner sewer system. I've always wondered why the sewer is only charged to those who are actively getting the pipe put in at the time. I just don't think that's how town infrastructure should work. And I think that this is a more equitable process for making sure that, yes, everyone in town is paying so that we have clean water and good sewer systems. So I see what you're saying, but I think I just come at it from a different direction, that's how I think taxes are supposed to work. So thank you for your input.
Thank you. And, I have to agree that if we believe that there is an importance to clean water and recreational opportunities for the people in our community, that we all are responsible for sharing in the burden and the cost of that. It's just like I've never stepped foot on the basketball field or played tennis on the tennis courts. Not that I don't want to, but I haven't done that yet. But I still want to support the recreation program. Just because I haven't really stepped foot into the police department for more than a background check, that doesn't mean that I don't support the police department. And I believe that, they provide a very valuable public service for all of us, and so on with all of the other departments that we are funding. We want to have a good community. We want a community where people feel comfortable. They feel that there's value for their tax dollars. If we don't get to use all of the departments that we are funding, that's okay. But it means that all of us in the community have the opportunity and the privilege, and we're entitled to use of those departments if we want to. So I'm happy to pay for sewers in town because I believe it's a good advantage for those who need it, especially those who are on waterways and who may be polluting our waters unknowingly. Any other comments by members? Mrs. Lima.
Echoing just a couple of points. I made some of these at the previous first reading, but the $15,000 not to exceed amount, that wasn't just pulled out of thin air, as alluded to by one of the members of the public who spoke. That's around the average that it would cost to put in a new septic system. And again, the idea was that if you needed to get a new septic system and that you heard that sewers were going to be coming by your house and they'd cost around the same, you would choose to tie into the sewer, making it a favorable option and something you'd want to consider. The second piece of this is I think it's real simple in my opinion. If you have a capped fair amount for an assessment, you then have more people who would support or be willing to pay the assessment and move forward with sewers at their property. The more people you have connecting, the more funds you have coming into your sewer fund, the healthier your sewer fund becomes. It's not appropriate to be forcing large amounts, as we're hearing up to $60,000 on folks who are gifting infrastructure to the town and they can't take it with them. And this is a way that makes it affordable for everybody, and while also leading to improved water quality, improved groundwater, many environmental issues. Again, in terms of what we've already heard about those who might not be sewer taxpayers or who might never see a sewer, again, the point's been made in terms of town services that many of us might not particularly benefit from or use, but we still pay for anyway because we recognize that the town's meant to function to benefit everybody, a collective good. We're a community. We're supposed to help each other. We're supposed to support each other because a rising tide floats all boats. That pun's for the Tile Lake Association. I'm in the pond. I'm asking those who are probably in the west end of town who will never know the anxiety and the shock that comes with getting an assessment mailed to you that could be $25, $35, $45 plus $1,000, and you are barely making your mortgage as it is to add that payment. It wasn't hard for me to have empathy for those who are dealing with flicker and noise with the wind turbines in Western Coventry. It wasn't difficult for me to have empathy for those who want to preserve the rural character of Western Coventry. And I can understand those things and empathize with members of my community that live in a completely different region of town that looks very different from the compact, dense eastern side of town that I'm used to. And I would hope that those members of that side of town and those residents could understand the same in this situation and why this is so important. So I thank the members of the public who came out today and did their kind of civic service and leading us and showing their support and participating here today. And I look forward to taking a huge step forward in improving what has been a disaster and an embarrassment in terms of administration of public utility and infrastructure in this town. Thank you.
Okay, may I have a motion second to close public hearing if there are no other people, because we'll allow more discussion by council members? Yes.
I just have one comment about the wording used to describe the Board of Appeals. I just have one comment.
What page are we referring to?
Well, the Board of Appeals is set up in section 191.11.
I'm sorry, what page?
it'd be, I'm sorry, page 94 of 107.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
under,
The only reason I bring it up is because the enabling legislation from, I believe it is, get you the year in just a second. The original enabling legislation from 1997, which has been amended, but not this section that I was going to point to. It's called the Board of Review, not the Board of Appeals. I suppose you could call it the Board of Appeals, but the Board of Review, which consists of 3 members appointed by the council, which is what section 191 says, is actually called the Board of Review.
Just a point of clarification. So this wasn't part of any revision. You're just calling it out that
Yeah, I said while you're doing the revision, you're talking about the Board of Appeals. You might as well call it by the name that is memorialized in the enabling legislation, which is the Board of Review.
so are you suggesting that we would have an amendment to change on
Yes.
191-11 under appeals to change the word appeals to review?
Yes.
Would also the category be called review and not appeals? This is on
Yes.
page
Board
94
of,
of 107.
so you're going to replace Board of,
It's in multiple places, though.
It's in
I just want to
multiple
understand
places.
in the existing ordinance. So we just want to make an amendment that wherever it refers to that board, we want.
we should do that eventually. You
Agreed.
don't have to do it tonight.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows what you mean by the Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
I might recommend, knowing that Fuss and O'Neill is going to be bringing forth a whole comprehensive set of revisions to this ordinance. I think they've even used the word rewrite. You know, I might recommend we save that till then, unless you think we could run into, I mean, I personally don't foresee any sewer projects happening between now and when Fuss and O'Neill submits to us next early spring, late winter, their sewer revisions.
I understand.
But thank
That's
you.
fine. I just want to make one other comment
Yep.
because it's before the council and I want you to know what
Certainly.
you're voting on. So the enabling legislation, there's no question that it appoints the town council as having supreme authority over sewers in the town. And that's why the town council appoints the Board of Review using the nomenclature of the Enabling Act. This amendment gives the town council the ability to overrule the Board of Review. That is not in the Enabling Act specifically. The remedy after you lose at the Board of Review is to go to Superior Court. Now, remember, the Board of Review is appointed by the council. It's appointed by the town council. So these are people who you've trusted with being fair about assessments. I think given the plenary power of the town council over sewers, I think you can probably overrule if you want. What you might consider in the upcoming General Assembly session is to just have something that ratifies that, just a very minor amendment to our sewer enabling acts. There are 3 of them. I have them. I've shared them with all of you before. You might just want to say, look, town council has the authority to overrule. That's up to you, but it's an option you might want to think about. Don't need to deal with it tonight. This is a much narrower scope, but it's something to think about come January when our legislators are putting bills in.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent thought.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. One more call for public comment. Chat. I'd like to have comments when we close public hearing. We have another person who's raised hand on Zoom. Please state your name. Please state your name and address, please. Sarah? Are you muted? Please unmute. Sarah, we only know your first name based on what I'm seeing. You're muted, so we can't hear anything you're saying. If you could please unmute your device so we'd be able to hear you and your comment. I think she put her hand down. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to speak? No one else? Okay.
Try again. Maybe soon.
Sarah, please state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah Scove of 28 West Shore Drive, Coventry.
Thank you. Your comment, please.
I just wanted to say I'm really grateful that everyone's taken so much time to look at different options for reducing the cost of sewers so that it's something that more of the town can afford. So thank you for your time, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, members of the council may have another comment, please. Please come forward.
My name is Gordon Davignon. I live at 8 Hickory Road, and I also own a property.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Please state your name and address again, please.
My name is Gordon Davignon, and my residence is at 8 Hickory Road, and I also own an investment property on Tioga Lake. I've been a lifelong resident of Coventry. My parents moved here in 1966. And the decision this evening is a long time coming. I remember back around 1968, 1970-ish, there was a referendum for sewers in the town of Coventry, and I believe it was like maybe $3 or $4 million at that time. I can't even think of what it's costing now. And each year, the town, and a lot of people may not realize it, but the town is actually paying millions of dollars to the town of West Warwick for the use of sewers. So we're paying for it anyway, but we need users to offset that expense. And we need to, and I own 4 homes, 6 homes. I own 4 homes in West Warwick, 2 homes in Coventry. My homes in West Warwick are investment properties that all have sewers. And if I sold any one of those homes, I would not have to put a new sewer system in. Each house in Coventry, I probably would have to update my septic systems. And so the long-term course is, I think it's much more advantageous to the homeowner to have sewers. And I've been following this for quite some time now, and I believe that the decision is the right decision of what you're doing, and I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Okay, seeing no other comments, may I have a motion second to close public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The public hearing is now closed. Members of the council may have a motion and a second to approve the proposed amendments to the Town Code Charter 191 sewers.
I make the motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Ms. Ludwig?
So thank you to the sewer subcommittee and to members Lima and LeBlanc for helping put these items forward. One thing that I think has outraged multiple people on this deck here is sewers and the costs. I was on the sewer subcommittee for approximately 2.5 years before running for office in 2020. I've been in favor of putting a cap in place and several of the other suggestions that have been put forward. It's time for a change. It's time to get citizens on board. I'm in favor of the of the items discussed tonight. And actually, we have a running list of a few additional items that we want to consider alongside with some of the Fuss and O'Neill items. So I am in favor tonight, and I hope the other counselors also agree and vote yes.
Okay. Any other discussion by members of the council? Any new comments? Okay. We ready for the vote? Is there anyone who wishes to put in an amendment relating to the amount not to exceed 15,000 or fixed? We heard that as a possibility.
It should have already been included, but I can make the amendment that,
I think it would be appropriate because it's not in our packet.
yeah, it's section 191-14, titled assessment, and it's paragraph D1A. It says residential assessments. It should state residential assessments not to exceed $15,000.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Vice President Ludwig, this is in support of the amendment. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mr. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon? Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. Now we'll just vote on the amended motion. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Heck, yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon? Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you for moving it to the front.
Okay, I hope you'll stay for the rest of the meeting. That would be good. Okay, we're on to the next agenda item, resolutions for discussion and or action. A resolution to authorize the town manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the town of Coventry Police Department and the town of Coventry School Department for the school resource officer. This is reference pages 9 to 17. May I have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. I guess you know we want to see you and talk to you, right? Chief Heist, tell us a little bit about this resolution.
So this document outlines the expectations of the school department and the police department for the SRO program. It's been reviewed by the school committee, their attorney, our solicitor's office, and the police department. There's no substantive changes since 2019 when this first was approved. So we would like to go forward with it.
Could you just review for us how many resource officers are assigned to each of the schools and how many are available during the day?
So we have one at the high school and one at the middle school.
And do they make any rounds of the elementary school?
We have liaisons, patrol officers that go into the schools and tour them and speak with the staff.
What does that mean, a liaison?
Patrol officers in that area, they would go into the schools.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other, let's see, may I have a motion and a second? We have a motion, a second discussion. Any other discussion by members of the council? Ms. Ludwig?
My understanding was this was, in essence, reapproving something that we had on the agenda. At least something of a, I don't know if it's every 3 years we review this or it was 3 years ago, but can you just
2019.
Can you just confirm why are we approving it again, in essence? Is it just on a rolling basis that it's needed? Why do we have to continue doing it?
It's prepared as a 3-year term memorandum of understanding. I'm not sure why that is a 3-year term, but that's the way it's been done.
As a part of what? I'm not in disagreement with anything within the material. I'm just confused as to why I'm approving or not approving a resolution on it.
I believe council would approve MOUs, a memorandum of understandings.
I think the bigger picture question is, why do we need a memorandum of understanding rather than a standing relationship with the school to just have officers in the school?
So generally with like accreditation and stuff like that, we're required to have a memorandum of understandings drafted. Okay. And then these are also approved by the school committee and also approved by the town council. So
and probably because in other parts of the state where school districts are separate from the town, it's a common practice. And so I don't know if there's some state law or accreditation provision that makes that distinction.
I think probably the most logical reason for an MOU is that the schools are run by a school committee, which is a delegation directly from the General Assembly to fulfill the constitutional requirement of educating, to give a free public education in Rhode Island. And you're agreeing to insert a police officer into the school. And I think, given the plenary power that the school committee has over the control of the schools, it's just a good idea to have what they call the MOU, a memorandum of understanding of exactly what the parameters will be when this police officer works as a resource officer, as they call it, inside the school, which is otherwise completely regulated by the school committee.
If this is positively affirmed, can we make sure that this goes to the school committee in case there's anything else? I don't see any.
Before the school committee.
Oh, it's already been approved.
That's why I think it's.
Okay. Thank you.
So, yeah, so they'll actually have to sign off on it also. And later in the document.
Okay. And again, I'm not against anything in here. I just wanted to understand the reason behind. I did attend the Coffee with a Cop program approximately a week or so ago, where the school resource officers were in attendance. They are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as I recall, when I first heard about memorandums of agreement, I believe that the school was also paying part of the cost of the resource officer, or got a grant or something, but now I think it's completely in our town budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's lapsed.
Okay. Mr. LeBlanc.
3 quick things. The resolution, I think we just need to change it to say the town of Coventry Police Department and the town of Coventry Public Schools just matches the agreement itself. But my question is, these are police officers, so their salaries and benefits are in the police department, even though they're being utilized at the schools. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just wanted to make sure I understood that. And then the only other comment, there's a couple of small grammatical changes that I want to make, but I can share afterwards that need to be made in the document itself.
Yeah, just send an email to our town clerk and
Sure.
she'll make the corrections. Thank you so much. Yep. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion. All right, roll call vote. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next, resolution to authorize the posting of proposed charter amendments to be voted on at the November 8th, 2022 general election at all polling locations and other municipal offices throughout the town, including the library, senior center, and parks and recreation. The purpose of making the text changes of these amendments is to allow people to be informed about the proposed charter changes. This is reference pages 18 to 28. May I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution? I'll make a motion. Is there any second?
Is there a reason we're not seconding this? I would like to discuss it and why, if we're not going to do it. So I'll second the motion just so that we can discuss the reasoning.
Correct. Okay, we have a motion and a second to provide information about the proposed changes. If you turn to page 18 to 28 in your document, you'll see what the text will look like. Okay, discussion. Mrs. Lima.
I'll be voting no on this resolution for a few reasons. One, it's not because I'm not in the interest of transparency and providing access to information to voters. My concern solely is with making sure that we comply by all Board of Elections or Secretary of State laws when it comes to posting information like this in polling locations. I do not want the town open to any chance of, let me put it this way. We're in a time where people have a lot of misinformation and distrust in the elections process. I won't go into the history of why. And I think the last thing that the town of Coventry needs is for people to go into polling locations on election day see these laid out, go on social media and make false claims about what we might be trying to do, if it's legal, et cetera. To me, I think it's appropriate that this be posted on the town website, maybe on the Board of Canvassers page, as well as the Charter Review page. I know that we have the ballot with all of the questions and people can access it anytime, anywhere. Not to mention a growing number of people are choosing to vote early or vote by mail or coming into, to town hall to vote early. So you're missing a huge segment of the voting population by only limiting this to November 8th voters. So in my opinion, I would rather we not do this at all and make sure that we don't open any doors for people in town to believe that there's any impropriety or any wrongdoing with our elections. From what I understand, our elections office is already being inundated with people who have issues with the 2020 election still. And doing multiple public records requests and bogging them down. They're a one-person department, and I don't want to give any excuse to feed into that. And again, this is not in an interest of not being transparent about ballot questions and what the changes are. I just don't want to open us up to liability legally there. And the second piece is just really basic. If we were going to do this and I was in agreement with it, I don't know why we'd need a resolution to do this at all. I think our agendas are really long enough, and this seems like something administrative that could have been handled behind the scenes if that was the case. But for those reasons, I'll be voting no.
Any other comments by members of the council? Mr. LeBlanc?
I agree with Councilwoman Lima. I couldn't have said it better.
Mrs. Shockley?
So, the rules and regs are not my forte. I appreciate that insight. I do wonder, besides the website, if there may be any place that we could put something like this out so that those who are not going to go to a website would be able to see it. I agree it doesn't necessarily have to be any part of a resolution. I just would like there to be public places where people, if they wanted to look at a hard copy, could, if it doesn't cause any issue.
Okay. Any other comments by members of the council? Ms. Ludwig? Excuse me. Ms. Ludwig?
I would be in favor if someone walks into the town hall and specifically asks for a paper copy of the charter for us to be able to provide that. I am not in favor of putting extra materials just in case. It doesn't seem right to me. It seems like we're going to have more problems doing something like that rather than just if they walk into the town hall office, if they walk into the library, if we can send out a memo to the directors or something, Ben, that Mr. Marchant, that would alert them if a citizen asks for a paper copy, we should print it for them. I have no problems with that. I don't think we need a resolution by the council to make paper materials possibly available in a voting area and then all of the extra that comes with it. So I'm not in favor of I'm not in favor of this resolution or this as a resolution. So I'll be voting no.
Mr. Gorham, is there any legal reason why these ballot questions with the crossed out changes cannot be available?
There's no reason that it shouldn't be available. I think the Board of Canvassers might also have a say in this since they control the polling places and the flow of information in and out. I would only say that, the ballot questions are not the changes. The changes are the changes. This pairs them together. That's the only reason that I think this was suggested, if I had to find one, so that if you've done your homework and you've read a question, but you want to make sure that the question accurately reflects the actual text of the amendment, which will be enshrined in our charter for perhaps generations to come, they would have a place to check it at the polling place. I can see a logical reason for doing that because not everybody gets totally prepared when they go to the polls. Let's face it, not everybody does. Somebody may just want to ask when they're at the polls, gee, I'd like to just review the questions before I vote. And so quite the contrary to providing disinformation, this actually provides information that is accurate. It provides the information that is going to be the actual charter amendment. So it's up to the council. It doesn't, it's many towns actually send out a mailer showing the voters exactly what the changes will be. I think that's a question for the council only, but it is done. This would just be a very truncated version of that where you're making it available at the polls. That's my explanation. And it's purely up to the council to do this. I think the Board of Canvassers may also have some say in it. So what you might really just be doing is making this document available to the Board of Canvassers should they see fit to provide it at a polling place. That's all.
Okay. Any other comments? Mrs. Lima?
To clarify my point is not that providing this document is misinformation. My point is the perception of misinformation in having this document in polling locations, because you get to people can take a slippery slope argument. We have bond questions on there and from the state. Is the state putting information on all those bond questions in polling locations? Probably not. We might have a candidate that says, why can't my information be listed in there? I understand that other towns do this or submit it, but I just want to avoid, because I feel like nothing is ever clean, cut and dry in this town, and something seems to trip up. The other piece of this too is there's a lot of changes and proposed changes in ballot questions for our charter. So if someone's, taking the time to read this, if there's say only one copy, we're now creating the opportunity for lines in polling locations and backup. So say someone finishes reading it, there's now the, thinking about how the traffic flows within a polling location, people need to get in and out. And my other question is, someone might come in and read this and not understand a certain change, and they might distract our poll workers from administering what they're supposed to do, asking them questions about the ballot question changes, and they probably won't know the answer. And that makes the resident probably upset, thinking that they should. Again, it's not a matter of not being transparent, not giving people information. In my opinion, there's better ways to get the word out before election day and post this in places around town that aren't in polling locations.
So is your objection to it being in the polling place but not available in all the departments in town?
I'm absolutely fine with that. I want to echo the idea that Vice President Ludwig made in terms of having all department heads be prepared to post a copy in their department or have one available if somebody wants to look at it. I know that there's newsletters that the senior center does. They could put a couple copies out with their newsletter that they put at the front. Anything like that. I want to be averse to any risk or perception of fraudulent behavior at the poll. I know it's not fraudulent, but I'm just saying we're in an age right now where people are looking for things to mistrust in the elections process. I just want to protect the town.
Thank you. But I know for referendums, the state does send out a mailer. We can't afford a mailer, which discusses the changes that are proposed. And so we can't afford a mailer. So how do we get the word out? You can see that we have very few people who attend either via chat or a public session. Very few people are going to our website. How are people going to know that there's even a referendum questions and all these ballot questions? They're going to go to the booth. They're going to see this ballot, which has all these state elections, national elections, et cetera. And then they're going to just be bombarded with a variety of questions, no explanations. Yes.
So we just had a primary election where people went and voted. No one came to my house and told me everything about themselves. I had to do a little research as a voter. I had to understand that it's my right and privileged to vote. And that the day I am voting is not the day to find out what I want to vote for. I should have done my work. Like you said, if someone can't get to town hall, call them and ask for one. If you don't go online, get someone to print it out for you. But if you go to the polling location day of and you have no idea what you're voting for, that's a problem. And so I wouldn't vote against this based on pure principle, but I think that that is a good principle behind it, that you should have done some research before going to vote.
Well, I agree with you. People should do research. You and I do research. I'm sure all of us sitting here do research, but we know that the average person does not necessarily do research. So I'm curious to know how they're going to find out what the ballot questions are and what the changes are going to be. So we can take an amendment to eliminate at all polling locations and just say a resolution that says that this document, which we have before us, can be available at the senior center and other places. Ms. Ludwig.
I'm not sure why, as a council, we need a resolution at all. It feels like it is, this is in the Board of Canvassers' wheelhouse. I have no desire to overstep them. I have no desire to make additional information available because we can. This is in their wheelhouse. And I would like to make a motion to table this indefinitely or until the Board of Canvassers provides an opinion on what would be appropriate, if anything.
A second the table.
So we have a motion to table this until we get feedback from the Board of Canvassers. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Any discussion?
Just one comment on
Yes.
the discussion piece of this. We just want to make sure that this document is 100% accurate, because if you go to page 21 of 107, ballot question number 5, the ballot question itself is correct, but at least how I'm reading A, it doesn't agree to what the question says. We're missing and not more than 6,500, and then that stipend should be 1,500 based off the question, but the document itself says 1,000.
Mr. Gorham, would you please check that?
So the question itself would be correct.
Just as one additional point, on the ballot, they're not questions 1 through 11. They're questions 4 through 14, I believe, because the state questions come first. And I think this might cause confusion more than anything else, because I shared this publicly and then I had to roll back and say, oh, wait, there are questions 1 through 11 for our local charter, but they're actually not questions 1 through 11 as you'll see them on the ballot.
Yeah, duly noted. Thank you, Councilmember LeBlanc.
Okay, so we have a motion to table and a second to table pending information from the Board of Canvassers, and also pending corrections by Mr. Gorham for the document that we have before us, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Roll call vote for the tabling. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion to table pending information from the Board of Canvassers passes. Next, resolution affirming the award of a contract by the town manager for the award of the winter road salt to Eastern Salt Company, 134 Middle Street, Suite 210, Lowell, Massachusetts. This award will be funded through the Department of Public Works operating budget. This is reference pages 29 to 37. Mr. McGee, welcome. It's a little early for you this evening and toward the end of the agenda, so.
I'm not complaining. Thank you very much.
Well, you'll be on later, so thank you. Tell us more. First of all, may I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution?
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
This is all about Woonsocket.
He knows it has.
I'll explain that.
Yeah. It's true.
I'll make a motion. Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, second. Okay, discussion, Mr. McGee, and you have to explain Woonsocket documentation in our packet.
There was inadvertent miscommunication between the town clerk and I. Initially, we presented using the state cooperative agreements that's indicated in the first that we can based upon other communities. But when I saw the price, and that's what we're going to be going with, I went to more detail and went to the state MPA. So what you have before you is we're using the state MPA at 7651 with their purchase order to go forward. Disregard anything to do with Woonsocket.
Okay. So tell us more.
Woonsocket didn't.
Tell us more about this resolution for the salt.
Yeah, this is the annual use that we have for the road salt. Every year we have a base amount that we have in our operating budget. We factor in 1,800 tons at this amount, and we have that amount in our budget along with some bag salt for the walkways. And this is all we have here. Again, I can't guarantee this is what it's going to be. It all depends what the weather's going to be. But based upon our amount of storms that we budget for, which is 12 snow events, and it also includes ice events, this is what we need for taking care of keeping the road safe.
And is this above or below the amount that you requested in your budget for last year or this past year?
Last year's amount was less than this, but now with the diesel prices up to bring the barges up from South America, that's why they've increased the prices like everything else with fuel. But it's several dollars more, but we knew it was going to be up. So we added money in there based upon what we thought was happening at that time when we were doing the budget.
And how is the department able to control its expenses based on what was budgeted?
Pray.
Right?
Pray.
Oh, pray.
I don't have any, I have no idea what the weather's going to be. So it depends on the type of storms, how many storms, what type of storms. That's how we deal with it. And
nope.
I don't have that superpower yet.
Now, what about last year?
Last year we were over budget because we had more snow and ice events than what we had budget. We had 21, not the 12. So we can't plan on that. This year, we're hoping that we are going to stay where we have been historically with 12 events. And that's all we can ever hope for and we can budget for.
That was my question, was referred to last year.
It's our best guess.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions for Mr. McGee? Yes.
Just to make sure I'm clear, if you had gone with your initial plan to just go with the state bidding, it would have cost us $78.80 a ton. You took a step further and it's now costing us $76.51 per ton, which is $2.29 less per ton. And
times 1,800 tons. So
I appreciate your due diligence on that and helping us get the best deal. And there's no other source to reach out to?
No, that's
see if we can get it down to 75.
There's no bargaining with that.
Well, Providence has big salt piles down near the
That's
water.
That's where we get it from.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where the companies are located.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Roll call vote. Vice President Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon? Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
President Dixon updates. I just want to repeat this list that I've repeated many times. It's very rewarding for members of the public to participate on boards and commissions. They are very, very active. They're making important decisions on behalf of all of us. And I want to remind you that there are some great opportunities, very value added for volunteers. Tax Assessment Board of Review for District 1, 2, and 3. We need to have people who represent each of the districts, so we especially need someone from District 1, 2, and 3. Juvenile Hearing Board, 3 openings. Last year, when we interviewed, there were so many people who wanted to be on this board, we couldn't even accept everyone, and we had very good candidates. And this year, we don't have candidates, but people came to us and said it was a very rewarding experience. So please consider the Juvenile Hearing Board. The Coventry Land Trust has 2 openings as of November 22nd, 2022. The Patuxent River Authority has 2 openings, and we've all can see the importance of our waterways and our watersheds. And we talk about these kinds of issues all the time when we talk about Johnson's Pond and Tioga Lake. So the Patuxent River Authority is very important that we have membership on this authority. We have 2 openings. The Sewer Assessment Board of Review, 1 opening. We heard that spoken of this evening. The sewer subcommittee has 2 full-time openings, 2 alternate openings. We want to make sure that they always have enough people at minimum to have a quorum. And so we need to have full complement on this particular important committee. And you can see that it's very active. And the Economic Development Commission has 1 opening. I want to mention recent community activities in Coventry. Many people say there aren't that many things to do. And one Saturday on September 24th, there were actually 3 events. Payne House had its monthly marketplace and tour of the home. There was a brass band played and the event was very lively and well attended. The last marketplace of the year at Payne House is Saturday, November 5th. Another activity was the wellness fair at the high school. It was sponsored by the Coventry Department of Human Resources. They received a grant to sponsor training on crisis management and wellness issues. There were several vendors, music, speakers, and free food. Finally, there was a Grow Coventry outdoor fair held at Camp Westwood. There was live music and vendors, and this is a nonprofit group that wants to sponsor more Coventry events for residents. So there are lots of things happening, and this is just a slice of one day in the life of a community member in Coventry. That was September 24th, and more things to come. Update, referendum on charter review proposed changes. Voters will have an opportunity to go to the polls on November and vote on the proposed changes. Next, update, the comprehensive plan. The Comprehensive Plan Advisory Team, along with the consultants, are planning a virtual public hearing on October 12th. That's tomorrow evening at 6:00. It's virtual. That means that any member of the public can go to the website and click on the link, and you will be actively participating in a public hearing relating to the comprehensive plan. The council approved the use of opera funds to pay a consultant to update our comprehensive plan, which is over 20 years old. There's been an active advisory committee working on the draft plan with a consultant under the direction of a director of planning and development, Mr. Herbert Durfee. So this virtual public hearing is Wednesday night, tomorrow night, 6:00, and information is available on social media sites and on the town's website. It's from 6:00 to 8:00. And it is an active meeting. So even though you'll be on Zoom, you will be put into small groups so you can actively participate. And finally, when we hear and we participate in meetings of planning and zoning commissions, we often hear references to the comprehensive plan, which, as I mentioned, is over 20 years old. The plan is an important document that guides decision-making for the council and for various commissions. It is also the plan that directs the needs for ordinances to support the plan. So do attend the interactive public hearing, because the comprehensive plan, which will come before the council for a vote and approval, is a very important document for us, and you have an opportunity to give input. Next item, Mr. Marchand, our town manager, will provide updates on the audit status.
Thank you, President Dixon. First, an update on the 2021 fiscal year audit. That is with our auditor and their firm. It has it under review. So we're expecting that to come out in a couple of weeks or however long their review takes. We look forward to getting that as soon as possible. I also got a communication that they have scheduled to begin the FY22 audit in mid-November. Typically, we've already started on it in the first week of October, but this year there are 2 new rules issued by GASB, which is the Government Accounting Standards Board, Rule 87 and Rule 96. These pertain to local government leases. I guess not all communities were reflecting the obligations as debts for the many types of leases for buildings, vehicles, equipment, and different things. So these additional rules will improve the transparency of local government accounting, but that's also pushing back our start date to begin the audit, and that's going to also push back our ability to complete the audit since it's due December 31st. But we won't be the only town in that position, and we'll do the best to get it done as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Marchand? Ms. Ludwig?
So it sounds as though until we get the 2021 audit completed, we don't have the start of the numbers appropriate to use for the 22 audit. So we're already starting behind, right?
Well, we have those numbers based on the preliminary audit. So we do have things to work with, and we are working on it in preparing our 22 statements, but officially, yes.
What are the top items that are in our control to ensure we submit an audit by the 2022 audit by December 31st, 2022?
The aspects of the audit that are within our control is to have the monthly statements, bank reconciliations, and financial statements prepared. We've already started on that, as I mentioned before. We don't have the staff capacity that we would like, since we have 2 vacancies that we're trying to fill in the finance department. And those vacancies will necessarily require some training and lead time. And so the things within our control is to focus on the priority of working on the audit, and some other things that are also important may have to take a back seat to the audit.
So I would like to know what the town council can aid in. You don't have to answer tonight exactly, but I would like to know what the town council can aid in to get the 22 audit in by December 31st of this year. And if that means we need to use ARPA money to hire temps, if that means some other recommendation that you have, I want to know what those recommendations are so that we can work towards that type of delivery. I'm in favor of looking at alternate items as well. If there's something that we think is outside the box, it's not just relating to staff capacity. I'm willing to discuss it, bring it into open session. I think if we took a unofficial consensus on the council, there would likely be agreement here on trying to find ways to understand the financial health and get the audit out for 22 by the end of the year. Thank you.
Mr. Marchand, do you have any response about anything the council may do to help?
At this point, no.
Okay.
I don't have any ideas about how to move the process any faster with the resources we have. And we have looked at adding resources and temps, but we're going to be under the same challenge with a temp as we would with a new hire. There's training, and that training is a distraction from the work that we'd otherwise just be getting done with the resources we have. So this is a kind of a long-term problem for the town, and we're not staffed up to handle it as nimbly as we'd like to, but we're working towards that every day.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. LeBlanc?
I second Councilwoman Ludwig's comments on anything that town council can do to help. I just feel like we kind of always hear a lot of reasons why we can't meet deadlines, but I want to meet them. But number one, can we get at least on the auditor's calendar a presentation for us for the June 30th of 2021 financial statements? We should at least schedule that with them, because they probably know when they think they're going to issue the statements, and that would be greatly appreciated. And number two, I would appreciate it if the council could receive a full set of draft financial statements before they're issued, because right now I think we only got like 5 pages of the statements. We didn't get the full draft. And then I also would like to see the required communications, because the auditors are required to provide the town with recommendations and a lot of other required contribution communications. So I would appreciate those drafts as well.
Certainly.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, Mrs. Lima.
Just want to second Councilwoman Ludwig's points about working towards solutions. I get PTSD hearing again that we're going to be not missing a huge deadline, and we don't have any idea of when we're going to file the FY22 audit. And I am not willing to be completely out of control in terms of and and with no detail or any idea of when this is going to be resolved for another 9, 10, 12 months plus. We can't do that again. So I need to hear more opportunities for solutions to move this along to catch up. And I'm not willing to let the leash run wild again like it has for the last year. I can't do that again.
Any other comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marchand. Next item, reference pages 38 to 55. Ms. Mills, our finance director, is not here this evening. Our deputy finance director will present the report, so please come forward, introduce yourself again, and tell us a little bit about yourself, because members of the public haven't met you yet, so you can tell us a little bit about your experience and background in the area of finance, and then you can present the April, May, and June monthly reports, please.
Okay. My name is Brian Hartnett. I'm a CPA licensed in Massachusetts. I have a master's degree at Bryant College. I spent 32 and a half years with the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. Towards the last section, I was doing corporate and financial institution audit. And I began my career with a small unknown bureau in DOR called the Bureau of Accounts. And at that time, CPAs were not doing audits, or they were just getting into it, the cities and towns. And they did CPA level audits, the state did, and they were accepted by the federal government at the same level as CPA. In fact, I was one of the major staff there because I actually wrote audit reports, prepared financial statements with the said Bureau of Accounts. Done many cash reconciliation. I walked into towns that had pretty bad books. And back in those days, the state did take the time to straighten them out because they like to see have other towns look nice. But since then, I've been since I retired, I've been hopping around CPA firms, been doing personal income taxes, and also doing state and local tax audits, and did IRS research, and state and local state research and IRS notices. So that's pretty much my background. And includes internal controls, and we had the same routine that CPA firms had. We had to write out the internal controls. We had to write our recommendations. We had to prepare the financial statements on what was GAAP then. GAAP has changed since I've done it, but the theory is still there. Right now, we're proceeding to straighten and install internal controls in the town. We're trying to correct prior errors. We are trying to build on correct the years up until 2021, which I think we have. We're going through the books into 2022. We're preparing reconciliations. And as I said, you cannot have a good current reconciliation without a good prior reconciliation. So you can't build on mud. I'm basically what I'm saying. So that's what we've been doing since I've been hired. Before I was here, Lisa didn't have a deputy. She was pretty much doing this by herself. The CPA firm did have demanding various things that they wanted done by the audit, in addition to financial statements. And she did do that. She's pretty much been in charge of fulfilling their needs, and I've been trying to get the cash reconciliations out as fast as I can.
Excellent. Thank you for that background information, because none of us knew everything about your background and the extensive work you've had in auditing. So thank you so much. Now, talk to us about the April, May, and June monthly reports, and for members of the council, begins on page 38 of our packet. So start with April, and then if anyone has a question on April, I'll call on members of the council, and then we'll move to May and June.
Well, basically, The revenue, we were in deficit in April, about $1.3 million. And prior year, pretty much, they were a deficit about about 600 million. But all the expenses were in line with that, 70% to 100%, 80% of the budget was being used up at that time. Pretty much, it was like in April, it looked kind of normal, revenue down a little bit. That's pretty much what April looked like.
Okay, any questions from members of the council about the April monthly report? Okay, is it something that you expect in April that you'd run a deficit? Does that have to do with the taxes being paid or some other factor?
No, it's revenues come in various times a year, and when the property taxes hit, payments, you have your big payers, or the banks come in, but pretty much it looked normal in April. It looks like the May report, I think there might be error here.
You're looking at the May report now?
Let me see. Let me just check something here. Okay, it is. Yeah. The May report,
That's reference page is 44 for us.
Yeah. May report pretty much the same thing. Taxes, most of the taxes came in, and the amount of expenses being used up, it's probably in line with the 11th month of the year. The deficit was about the same. I think the front page might be an error, but actually it was a surplus. I think the front page somehow I got mixed up. It's a surplus in April of 6 million. 4 million of which is thankful of, that's after you take out the COVID surplus. So a lot of revenues came in April. And as far as the expenses go, they're in line with what you expect every department to spend. Now, when we move on to June, there's something you should notice on the front page. There's a little chart, town clerk, finance department, tax collector. They had people who left. And when someone leaves, they're entitled to their unpaid leave. But that wasn't budgeted for. Like the police department, if they had somebody leave, would not know in advance that they would have somebody leave, and they would have to pay their vacation pay or whatever, and that would be on the police department a budget expenses versus their budget. So there's a chart in front that approximately you take all the departments where that happened to, $184,000 was because of that. So that would drive up the expenses of those various departments by $184,000. The revenue, not much came in June. Most of it came in April. Expenses, as you would be normal. Total expenses, 99.5% of the budget was used up. Which is in line with the prior year. It was a little bit more than 100% was used up. And the net surplus, if you take out the COVID surplus, is $1.2 million. And that's in line with the prior year. Any questions?
Questions, Mr. LeBlanc?
Thank you, Mr. Harnett. With your experience, do you think it's an unreasonable request to ask for a balance sheet when these are presented?
Well, my experience is you cannot have a profit balance sheet unless you have a set of books that are totally accurate. Therefore, in order to get a balance sheet, you have to make the books accurate. Therefore, we had to go by month to make the books accurate. Therefore, we can't have a balance sheet that is with numbers that are not appropriate in there. In addition, the software in which the town is using cannot create a balance sheet. Therefore, we have to go to the software company and have them create the balance sheet. But we cannot go to them until all the records are up to date, all the cash reconciliations are in there. And if you want a June 30th balance sheet, everything has to be done up to June 30th.
Wow, that's a lot to digest. Then how do we know that the P&L that you're providing tonight is accurate?
Yeah, because I gone through most of the reconciliations, most of the accounts. I posted right up to June 30th. In fact, we're posting to New Year now. Well, everything's being double checked. We double check the revenues, especially the tax revenues. Now, if they're accounted to, might be off, maybe like a police department, small revenues. They may not be 100%, but they would check too. But if you want, I would say these are 99.9% accurate. Something might have been missed, and we are double checking the reconciliations, making sure that everything's posted.
Are these P&Ls on a cash basis or accrual? Because that's a big difference.
Yes. The gap, which I'm not, as I said, I'm not up to the recent gap because I did it when the Bureau of Accounts was in the sixes. These are semi-accrual as in gap.
So semi-accrual means that there's going to be some adjustments come year end to get to full accrual, and those adjustments could be somewhat material.
Well, as far as the revenues go, I don't think they would be material.
Excuse me, Mr. Hartnett.
I'm more concerned about the expense, but
Mr. Hartnett, could I ask for a clarification? Because when I was in my graduate school program, they specified that in local accounting, governmental accounting, it's modified accrual,
right?
Which it's different than full accrual because you're recognizing all your revenues when they're owed, even though our sewer revenues go out 20 years. And the huge adjustment was recognizing 100% of the revenues, even though we're not going to collect it for 18 more years.
Mr. Marchand, basic financial statements include a balance sheet, a P&L, and cash flows. So that's all I'm asking for this board to have, because on the balance sheet, you have a bunch of different liabilities. You have accounts payable, you have accrued liabilities. Those are all things that are our town's financial statements that I'm asking to be correct. And for those to be correct, you have to have a correct P&L as well. And without having the basic financial statement package, you cannot confirm that this P&L is accurate. That's my main point.
As I say, we started in a hole.
Understood. We've been hearing that for a year and a half at least.
Okay, then you should have gave us more staff. Okay,
that's what we were asking. We were asking what can we do?
Okay, well then.
So I appreciate the answer.
Okay, and also, as I said, you cannot give.
Okay, I don't think that.
In any event, I have one more point,
President. Financial director to have to, who's only been here a few months to justify.
We just got a great answer. They need more help. Okay. I have one more question though. Cody, President Dixon, do you mind if Cody brings up the APRA transparency report on our website as of 6:30? Is that okay?
What would be the purpose of it? I'm just asking.
It's as of 6:30 and we have reporting in front of us as of 6:30 and I just want to ask a question.
Okay. Are you able to do that, Mr. Horton? Okay, please do it.
So this is, as you can see, as of 6/30/2022. If you scroll over down the bottom, Cody, please. It comes to a total of 207,949.91. And if I go to the June 30th report that we have here, it says ARPA, and it says 262,275, but it's for the exact same period. So I just didn't know what the difference would be.
I would have to get back to you on that.
Because we just want this to be completely accurate.
This report was completed in July, and the report you have was done in the last 2 weeks. So
it says as of 6:30 though.
Yeah. we completed that report for June 30 as of July. And so since we did that sheet, there may have been additional revenues that were not reported at the July point in time that were attributable to prior to June 30. So there would have been a correction or revision upward since then.
Okay. So this needs to be increased for some expenses that I'm not aware of that we approved.
Correct. One of the problems
when we
we've
have
had-
approved it as a council, if it's ARPA.
Well, yeah, because what that number is on the right-hand side is the actuals.
Mhm.
And in many cases, some of our expenditures came in under budget. And so there's going to be a differential between what was approved and what was actually spent. In several of our departments, because of lack of staff or turnover or people out sick, not all the invoices were processed in a timely manner. And so we had invoices going back to May and June that we were just processing in September. So we're trying to catch up on our financials is the situation, why you'd have that discrepancy from July to today.
I appreciate that commentary. I just don't understand. I know for a fact that we've approved the 207. I just don't know what's in this 262. This is purely ARPA money.
You approved the 647. Am I seeing that right?
No, 207, 949.
207 and what has been spent of the approved 647.
Can you go up, Cody, please? Keep going. I just want
All the
to
way
see
up to the top of the column.
Amounts budgeted. So
Amounts.
we've approved the ARPA amounts paid. So I just want to fully understand.
So
Mr.
the amount
LeBlanc?
budgeted was what was approved in each resolution, and that's the running tally. And then on the right, the amounts paid is how much of that approved money has been processed for invoices.
Okay, I just, again, make sure that this is completely accurate. That's all, please.
Yep.
Mr. LeBlanc, any other questions?
No.
Okay. Any other members have questions? Mrs. Shockley?
Thank you for your report. And I'm looking at the June revenue summary. And I just wanted to get an understanding. So there's a telephone tax that I assumed, and this year was correct, is just paid at end of year. It's line item 615 under state aid. It looks like last year it never got paid.
Well, I'll probably have to get back to you on that because I'm even not familiar with the telephone tax. I'm from out of state.
Well, I asked because it's $430,000.
Yeah.
And it's a revenue. So it got paid in full in June for the 22 fiscal year, but shows no payment ever having been processed in the 21 fiscal year. So yeah, if you could look into that, I would appreciate it. Just because it seems like a significant revenue.
I'm happy to make a wild guess. Because of the pandemic, the state processing could be lagging a year, and maybe this year we'll get two payments as they catch up.
Just because
But we'll
I
look
think it's a
into that.
great guess, but it's $430,000.
Yeah, we'll look into
So let's look into it.
Yep.
And one question under expenditures in June, non-core function. Could you just explain once again to us what that means, non-core function? It's under expenditures, in the June report.
I'll have to get back to you. I'm not familiar with that department.
Okay. So there have been a few questions that were asked. So getting back to us really means that you would just submit the responses to Mr. Marchand, who could then distribute them to the members of the council. Okay.
Okay.
So your contact, well, of course, discuss it with Ms. Mills and determine how she wants to disseminate this information to Mr. Marchand, who would then send it to us.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. Discussion, fire study RFP bids. Mr. Marchand sent an email dated October 4th, 2022 with a review of 4 proposals and attachments for each. These are not in your packets. This is listed as a discussion and not a vote. Mr. Marchand, would you please discuss each of these four fire study RFPs? We've got your memo.
Yes. So we put out an RFP for proposals to do a study of the 4 fire districts in Coventry to look at the complete universe of what that entails to provide the various levels of service that each of the districts provide throughout town, and to study that and come back with recommendations as to alternatives that could best meet the needs of the town in the most efficient and affordable way possible. And to that request, we received 4 proposals. And those proposals were shared with the town council last week.
Yeah.
I don't have the proposals in front of me, but there was a pretty big spread between the respective firms from 62,000 all the way up to 150,000. 164,000. Some of these firms are smaller with very specific experience working in Rhode Island, Connecticut. Others are national firms with bigger price tag and other related experiences. We've worked with Matrix before. They were in the middle of the road at 90,000, a little higher than what they had previously estimated, which we had gone off of in our proposal. We were expecting something in the $45,000 range. So everything was a bit higher, but that could be to a number of factors. But we do feel that certainly they're all qualified, and some are perhaps more qualified based on their experience working in Rhode Island.
Okay, members of the council, do you have any questions for Mr. Marchand or about any of these proposals that we had sent to us as attachments? Mr. Shockley.
Thanks for the memo. Did you call any of the references that they listed or any of the local towns that were listed, such as Charlestown and Lincoln, to see what their experiences were with Dynamics or Matrix?
Not yet. We have our own experience with Matrix from the performance audit, but we can certainly reach out to check references, and we could even invite them to come in and make a presentation to the council if you're interested.
Ms. Ludwig?
I think I heard you say Dynamics and Matrix, but I don't know if you were expressing a favor or not, Councillor Shockley.
They both listed Rhode Island projects, and I just wasn't sure if we reached out to our local municipalities.
Okay. So I read through the 4 proposals. I didn't feel strongly, for one or the other. To be honest, 2 of the companies had a lot of similarities. I would be interested in further discussion with the council on Dynamics and Matrix. I know we're not voting on anything tonight, but just on who to possibly bring in. But those were kind of my top 2 to throw out there.
Thank you. And I was feeling about the same way when I read through them. Each of them has about a similar timeline. It's about at least 5 months from the beginning from the first time they get the contract to when they complete it. So it brings us back to around probably May or so, something like that. Dynamics and Matrix, because we know them, seem to have the most experience with fire departments. And I would like to see them come back. But I'd like to hear what the rest of the council has to say. Ms. Lima.
I would concur. I'd like to hear from Dynamics and Matrix. Again, neither one of them jumped out at me more than the other. And just because we worked with Matrix before doesn't make me want to jump to spend $30,000 more. And I would like to have them publicly present and make their sell to the council and also to the public. And I think it's important to make sure there's public comment near that. And so, those who might be stakeholders with fire districts in town might be able to ask some questions that I, as a non-fire professional, wouldn't know to ask in terms of their approach or what things they'll consider when going through that. So, yeah, that's where I stand.
Okay. Mr. LeBlanc, any favorites that you would like to bring back for a presentation?
I did not.
Okay, Mrs. Shockley.
I agree. Dynamics and matrix were the two that I had the most interest in, but what Councilmember Lima just said about not necessarily wanting to pay $30,000 more just because we slightly know a quantity, I agree with.
Okay.
Dynamics?
Dynamic.
Or dynamics? I would say dynamic.
It's dynamics. It's dynamics. Yeah. Okay.
Dynamics you give to dinosaurs.
Okay. Oh, that was very funny for lateness of the hour. Good. Okay. Mr. Marchand, could you please invite these leaders from each of these two companies to come probably for October 24th?
Yes.
Please. Thank you. Oh, yeah, they could come via Zoom. That would be fine.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure if they have local representation here or not. Okay. Next, G2, discussion by the council and review of opera fund requests. The council to indicate to the town manager those opera requests they want a presentation on October 17th, which will be next Monday at a special council meeting. There is a review of the packet the town manager sent via an email on October 4th, 2022. Tonight, the council will decide for which request it would like a presentation, and I'll look for consensus on which presentations you'd like to hear. The presentations will take place on Monday, October 17th, 2022. There may or may not be a vote at that night if the council wishes. Otherwise, voting will take place Monday, October 24th, 2022. If there's not a presentation, this does not preclude a vote on the request on the 24th. Organizations in town may submit requests at any time. However, this is the first round, and we will be considering these requests that we have received to date. Mr. Marchand's cover memorandum dated October 4th indicates that there are 53, I did count 55. I went back and did it again, but it's a significant number of requests for opera funds, and the total amount of the request equals $20,588,811. Mr. Marchand also indicates that there is $9,737,646.95 in the allocated funds currently. The requests are sorted by category. I'm reading some of these so the members of the public and those on Zoom will be aware of this. The requests are sorted by category as follows: water and wastewater projects, town administrative projects, town facilities, town public works, town parks and recreation, economic development, fire districts, and community requests. The packet does not have page numbers. Madam Clerk, as consensus is reached on presentations, please contact the person who submitted the request to come to the October 17th, 2022 meeting with the council and ask them to present no more than a 5-minute presentation or be prepared to present a 5-minute presentation on the request. As a note, if each request were to be given a presentation of 5 minutes only, it would take us 4.5 hours of presentation, which I'm sure we're all willing to do, but I'm just mentioning that. So I'd like to ask you to please turn your attention to the first category, wastewater and stormwater. There were 7 requests. Which presentations would the council like to hear? So if you'd like to go through your packet, if you copied it, to make a determination of which ones you would like to hear.
I didn't plan to give my notes like this, so I'll give my notes in a more general sense, but
What we want, all we're doing this evening is determining which presentations we would like to hear. It could be by department or request by request.
Could we consider by area first?
We could do it any way you want.
Because we could talk about this for like 5 hours tonight in itself.
Water and wastewater projects first.
Yeah.
There were 7 requests there.
I guess the ones that I would consider in no specific order that I'd like to hear about would be wastewater, the fire districts, park and recs, and then public works. Those are the ones that those are the areas at least that I would love to start with.
Okay, in wastewater, the requester is our assistant manager. She's submitted 2 of them, 3 of them. No, we're not. Excuse me. I understand that, but we have to determine who's going to make a presentation. So in wastewater and stormwater, most of them have been presented by our assistant manager, so we can invite her to come back to discuss those. We also have requests by Mr. McGee. So basically, there are two requesters in that category, Mr. McGee and Miss Broadbent.
And I think Mr. McGee would also be in the area of public works as well. So maybe we could help consolidate certain topics. And when he's presenting, doesn't have to come up 7 different times.
Right. So is there consensus that you would like Miss Broadbent to come?
I would, but that's just, I mean, I just threw that out. That was just my opinion. I don't know if we wanted to kind of go down and make sure that
That's it.
those are the areas that
She
the
would
full
be
board wants to
discussing
hear.
water and wastewater projects, and Mr. McGee would also be discussing the two in that category.
President Dixon.
Yes.
Just want to point out here, so there's 55 requests that came in.
Mhm.
They're only from like 5 people. So
it's more than 5.
Okay, 7. So I'm not trying to make light here, but to ask them to come in and, I mean, there's only a handful of people here. So maybe for example, rather than category by category, maybe we go by person, because for example, for Director McGee, I know he's in several different areas. I went through all 55 items, and out of Director McGee's items, I'm only interested in hearing 5 of them, for example. So that's kind of how I did my notes. I don't know how others did them, but I don't know how we collect that information, but it's in essence a small number of presenters. So do we maybe say, provide the list of items we want Mr. Marchant to post these people on? Like, so for example, I don't need, multiple different fire districts to come back in. I think I have enough information if we can ask a few questions tonight that we don't need to have them come back and present. So because this was the first page, like we got the first page of the application, I would want to know, for example, can we have access to the rest of the supporting data they provided? Then I don't need them to come back again to do another presentation. Like I probably have it. So can we maybe discuss it in a little bit different way and then figure out who's going to do a presentation?
Mr. Marchant, is there any other data that has been submitted that we do not have?
Yes, some of them did provide additional sheets and specs and quotes and more information, but not all of them did. And so it really depends on those projects that you're interested in learning more about. If you want to know about, and I don't remember which one's which, but I know, I believe as Hopkins Hill wanted to redo their second floor facilities, bunk rooms, bathrooms, and everything. That was just a 1-page sheet. There is no backup behind that. But the Coventry Fire District did have additional information on the service bay flooring. So if you're not interested in it at all, then that additional information wouldn't be pertinent to present. But if you are interested in it, that can be provided. So I'm happy to provide all the information. I can just send that to the council. The intent for tonight was to a first blush to just weed out anything that you're not interested. We'll just set aside and not present on, so that we can narrow down what we're talking about next Monday.
Thank you for that. Admittedly, when I thought we were going to get these requests, and I thought there'd be lots of presenters, but there's not really. There's like a handful of presenters. So I don't want to have the fire districts come in and present again. If they're supporting documentation, I would happily take a look at that. Rather than asking each one of them to come back in. If there's that supporting detail, then I probably don't need it. If they want to maybe make someone available if we have questions, that's different. Like I don't personally need another presentation from them, but availability to answer questions.
I think everyone that's interested in it knows it's a public meeting and they'll probably be here. So if there are questions, there may be an opportunity to ask them. But as far as presentations go, yeah, we can focus in on what you're most interested in learning more about, so you have a more informed decision.
Okay, so I'm looking through who the requesters are. It's Ms. Broadbent, Mr. McGee, Ms. Blumenthal, Ms. Bosworth, each of the fire districts, Ms. Jacobs, and a community member, Mr. Lindley, and neighbors. So we have to, even if we just say to Mr. McGee, we want you to come in and make a presentation, we have to really give him some idea of focus on which request we want him to focus on. Now, we could ask him to present to us the ones that he feels are his top priorities, because he has a long list. He could, what are your top priorities? Which ones could you get other grants for, or some other funding for? So there are ways to focus this, but we have to make a decision as to who do we want in? What are we going to ask them to do for us? What are we going to ask them to present, so that we have enough information so that we can then make some decisions? So do you want the assistant manager to come in? She has several requests.
That's fine.
Okay. And you want her to speak on all of the requests that she has submitted?
If we go down that path, Ms. Dixon, we'll have to go through every single one of these. I mean, I don't know if we as a council want to come up with like the top, like 3 or 4 that we're interested in. I mean, number one for me was, Kevin McGee's, director of DPW, the asphalt program. We've spent money on a study. We know that we had to spend over $100 million to pave this entire town.
Right.
His request was 2.7 million, which is a drop in the bucket. We got these funds for infrastructure. I think that's number one, in my opinion. And a lot of people complain about the roads in this town. And so I've already gotten a ton of emails, ton of calls. People want their roads paved. So for me, that is item number one. I don't know if anybody supports that, but I would love for that one to be discussed.
So you want that one? He's here, so he's listening to this. So you're talking about the asphalt program?
Yes.
Roads and repair.
It was number 20 out of page 72 of the email that we got
Okay.
from the
And
manager.
anything else you would like him to discuss other than that one?
It kind of goes along with it. It's the asphalt repairs, the pavement. It was 109,000, but it was a lot smaller. But those two kind of go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Okay, so we're going to ask him to focus on those two.
That would be my suggestion. Yes.
Okay. Do the rest of you agree with that? Do we have consensus on that? Okay. And what about the first one on wastewater and stormwater? What do we want to hear from Ms. Broadbent? She's got Briar Point sewer pumps, Woodland Manor pump stations, Sandy Bottom pump stations. Which ones are of interest for the council to hear about?
Personally, it was the Woodland Manor and Sandy Bottom pump stations. It looks as if the recommendations were that these have been recommendations. I don't know that I'm ready to spend 3.6 million on one thing. Although I would be open to discussion.
Okay, Mrs. Lima?
One thing about the Woodland Manor pump station, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a part of the housing authority, correct? Woodland Manor? No, what is it?
Woodland Manor is the apartments behind the Cumberland Farms on News Neck Hill Road.
Okay.
And they had a private sewer line that was put in, and the pump station, and the town took it over, and it's in not great condition. So
Okay, so it's not public or affordable housing, not in the housing authority. Okay.
No, I don't know if any portion of those apartments are affordable. I think some of them might be, but I don't think it's all of them.
The note I had is, I know that this town hasn't been applying for or taking advantage of CDBG block grants that we should be applying for every year. That's money that that's on the table for us to take. So in the spirit of that, I thought that was part of the housing authority, but I just want to make sure that before we spend money on anything like that, we should be using that grant money from the state that's in the amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars based on town size and population that we should be going after. But while I have the floor, I'll just mention for President Dixon, I don't know if I need a presentation, but I think based on the showing you saw tonight from those who are on Tyoke Lake, The Briar Point Extension project is something to be considered, in my opinion. I think the Sandy Bottom Pump Station, considering that's one of the main arteries and activity points in town for our main sewer hub, especially in our business district. That's in terms of Ms. Broadbent's requests. In terms of the DPW requests, I know we've talked repeatedly about how much longer can we defer the gatehouse maintenance. And then I just, my eyes pop out of my head at the Upper Dam Pond stormwater and Lake George drainage projects. I need to hear more about that. I also would like to maybe understand how something like that would fit into our wastewater facilities plan, if that's something that would be worked in. I don't know. But in terms of wastewater projects only, if that's how we're going to be approaching this conversation, those would be my notes.
Okay, it sounds like under those projects submitted for wastewater and stormwater, everything except the wash rack system, we want to hear more about. All the pump stations and from Ms. Broadbent. That's what
I don't know that I need to hear a presentation. I was just letting you know that those are of particular interest to me. It would just be nice maybe to have forwarded the supplemental information that goes along with those.
Well, I think it would probably be important for her to prioritize because each of these have pretty hefty bills. So she could perhaps prioritize the ordering, which ones are the worst condition, which need to be considered critical, et cetera. Mr. LeBlanc?
Just to piggyback off of Councilwoman Lima's commentary, and just to clarify Councilwoman Shockley's comment. So the 3.6 million, Member Shockley, that's actually sewer lines throughout a bunch of roads around Briar Point, just because it says / pump station. So it looks like it's one.
I didn't think it was just for a pump station. Before hearing all of the residents tonight who seem like they're ready to tie in, I looked at 3.6 out of 9.7 and thought that's a lot to go towards our sewer program. I would like more information on how people actually tying in might be a benefit. I also am curious about other possible monies for that, but that could be a different discussion.
Completely hear you. The reason why I want to bring it up, though, is this money has to be spent in a certain time period. And if we want to use some of these funds for sewer construction, given that notice has to go out 2 years in advance, it's just something that would have to be determined sooner rather than later. I just wanted to clarify that. That's all.
Okay, thank you. The next category is administrative. I think we've got some ideas about what you'd like to have presented. So now we're going to go to category administrative, and these are one has been put in by Mr. Marchand and one has been put in by our IT administrator. Is there any interest in hearing presentations on these two? Mr. LeBlanc.
I am 100%, after hearing what I heard tonight, in favor of learning about a financial software platform, one that can deliver the basic statements that I've been requesting for quite some time. So I'm very much in favor of that.
That would be Mr. Marchand presenting or Ms. Mills, correct? Okay. Mrs. Lima?
I'd like to echo that sentiment. And I definitely want to see which programs the administration is looking at going with, because as someone who has a partner who works for a municipality elsewhere in Rhode Island that's able to on demand pull up their department's budget, see the last 10 years of budget to actuals, see their current balance for each of their line items, and also, pull up the balance sheets. And as Jamie has mentioned, I think that's something that is long overdue. In my opinion, as someone, I'm biased as a marketing public relations person. I'd love to see a new website, but to me, I think that feels more like CIP dollars going to that instead of ARPA funds due to its amount.
Okay, Mrs. Shockley.
I also am a proponent of a new website, but agree that it might be able to come from elsewhere. I am concerned about Keystone. I know that none of our current administration put that software into place. But given that we think it's going to be $500,000 for a new system, I would want to at least look into, did we buy a bottom line version of Keystone? Is there more we could do with what we have that at some point Coventry chose not to purchase? I don't want to throw good money after bad. And that being said, I think we've had this software system for less than 5 years. And I don't know how much we put into Keystone at this point.
So, yeah, we can discuss.
I'm
that
just
on the
saying that's what I would be. I don't just want a random presentation. I want to know what's wrong with this program, why we can't make it work, and then information on possible new software.
That sounds like an agenda item on another meeting.
I'm deciding on $500,000 if it's something they really want. I think it should be part of this meeting.
That's next.
And this is for both the school and the town, not just the town.
Okay. Mr. LeBlanc?
I wanted to comment on that specifically. I actually believe it should be presented by town and school.
Yeah.
Because the school has a lot of say in this as well, because they're going to have to use the system too. So I don't think it should just be presented by a town person. I think we should also have a school, one of the finance, either Harold or Chris.
We can inquire as to whether they've even started to talk about this. I don't even know.
I would hope they would if we're going to decide on that amount.
I don't know. Mr. Marchand, has the school engaged in any discussion on changing the financial software package?
I spoke with Superintendent Cowart and he is fully in support of it.
Of changing it? Have they had any discussions or?
No.
Would they be prepared to make a presentation?
No,
Are they here to listen?
Well, with this proposal, we haven't even gone out to RFP,
Right.
and we don't have any proposals. So we don't know what the exact price tag will be. We know that 3 years ago, there were two proposals. One was for 300,000, one was for 190. We went with the 191 and scaled it back a little bit. It was customized, and that's where we ended up.
Okay. All right. So we can have a sort of a preliminary discussion on that. We won't be able to get into too much depth because it's going to take a lot of conversation and coordination. Mrs. Lima?
I think one other thing that was in the administration section was the proposal for town hall renovations. In my opinion, and this trickles down to some other DPW related requests, until we have a facilities plan, master plan of town buildings, it feels kind of cart before the horse to consider making these investments when we've got a school building committee that's having conversations about buildings. And, you know, there's been conversation on this council about opportunities to better utilize the buildings that we have. So I would rather put some more strategic thought. I don't even know if there's a version of a Jacobs report like they do for the school of town buildings with an assessment of their condition from an official third party, or if that's something that's normally done. But I'm not denying that these pieces need to be done, but I'd like to see that it's part of a more coordinated, comprehensive effort for all town buildings than just one-offs.
So I'm going to back up a moment. In the category of administrative, we want to hear at least a preliminary discussion of the financial software package, but no interest in any presentation on a new website at this moment in time. Is that correct? Did I hear correctly?
At some point, and just not ARPA funds, in my opinion, either CIP or other funds for the website. But I do think it's something for a priority for this fiscal year.
Certainly. But right now, we're going to focus on request for ARPA funding. All right. Now we're into facilities, and this is where we get town hall renovations. And you're suggesting that we need to have a facilities plan before we would have any presentations on that. Okay. Under facilities.
Excuse me,
I'd like the
highly
generator,
recommend a
maybe.
presentation on the town hall renovation specifically because of security and safety concerns. If we were a community that was prepared with all of its strategic plans at the point the ARPA funds became available, then we'd know exactly where to fund it. But because the town has not had any plans in place, I deem this as a very high risk, high need area that before we do any master plans of all our facilities, we take care of this piece. So I'd like a chance to explain that and present it. But if the council's not interested, then that's fine too.
Yes.
So we've had conversations about how Megan Weed in the library has said that library is too small for her. And we know we have people across the street at the annex that work for the town. And then we have pieces over here. They need meeting space. This room is overbooked. We have a conference room. So my point is, if we know that we have inefficiencies with space, I understand safety concerns and security concerns, but to put in that much money to this side of the building when we know this building overall isn't serving many departments well, I just think that maybe it's in your presentation, I don't know, but we have multiple problems besides just the town hall space, and we have the across the street to consider, and the fact that the library is too small, and I just there's a lot more to consider in my opinion than just this side of the building.
Okay, we're in the category of facilities. Mr. Marchand would like to present on the town hall renovations. We've also heard the comment that we need to have a facilities plan. Comments from the rest of the members of the council. We have 4 requests in the facilities area. Ms. Ludwig.
I'm willing to listen. I'm interested in what the concerns are. I do share some of the sentiment. I think Councilor Lima has referenced, though, in terms of to spend over $1 million on a location that we don't have a full plan for anything happening in this building would be very difficult, versus, say, the community center, which we'll get to, that wants to spend, $100 or $200 here and there on things that are on very specific projects or new roof or something. So I'm just going to temper that and say I do want to know about the safety and other concerns. But my long-term vision is to have the library down over at the old police station, and this would not even be a library anymore, and we're going to figure out how to get there. I know we'll do it.
You're going to jump to solutions already. Okay.
Yes. So I did want to just ask one other question. I don't know if you can satisfy it with a nod, Director McGee, but there was a $48,000 tech request for DPW. It was just the front page of the request that we saw. So I couldn't tell, is this for citizens to put in requests to the DPW to see where their request is, or is this only for internal?
Both.
Okay, yes, I would like to see that. I would like to see that. I mean, I have multiple residents asking me, I called the director, this is what happened, this is what didn't happen. And then I have to call the director and say, did this happen? Did that happen? So having some sort of two-way communication, a log of what has been done, a way for residents to submit things in a digital manner. Those are all things that residents are asking me. I think that would be helpful to hear a presentation.
And I think Mr. McGee will tell you that 4 years ago, I spoke to him about this database and was told that there is something exists already in our system that could be used. And Mr. McGee had volunteered to be a pilot program to try it out. So this is something that we've talked about and is definitely needed. Definitely needed. So which request is that, Mr. McGee?
EPW technology. It's the first one that they put in their
EPW technology. Okay. Well, let's get back to facilities. Mr. Marchand, I think there is an interest in hearing something about the town hall renovations, especially as it has to do with security, even though we don't have a facilities plan. And perhaps you can talk about how that plan might be developed going forward so decisions can be made. So we'll could do that one. So now we're on to, Public Works. Which of the Public Works would you like to hear? The DPW technology? Did that seem of interest to you all? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. What else?
We already gave the asphalt pavement program and asphalt pavement maintenance.
Yep. Anything else? Mrs. Lehman?
I need to get a better overall view of the strategy around all of these vehicle and equipment needs. I want to make sure that we don't go down a path where we were, say, in an ideal DPW Kevin McGee world, if all of our ARPA money went to all of these pieces of equipment, I don't think it's smart to have all new equipment all at once. I know they're all different pieces of equipment, but it would be nice to know if we had some form of a plan or priority list in terms of fleet maintenance of these different pieces of equipment. And I need a better understanding. I know that in your opinion, all of them are in debt. We need them all right now, and they're all at their worst condition and all old. But it would be just nice to know in terms of priority, which of these pieces of equipment would you say is used on a daily basis? Which of these is emergency basis? Which of these lends itself to an ROI or a more front-facing service that the town provides to residents? Like all of those pieces would be important to me. And again, I want to highlight too the ROI piece. That would be important in terms of all these pieces of equipment and vehicles.
Any other requests? Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay, Mr. LeBlanc.
I agree with Councilwoman Lima, with one exception, the automated sanitation trucks. That one, I think we need to discuss sooner rather than later, just like the asphalt, because I get a lot of complaints about trash not getting picked up on time, recycle getting missed because the trash trucks are down. So I would really, if that was page, I think it was 28 out of 72, that particular one, I would think that we would want to talk about that sooner rather than later.
So far, Mr. McGee, we have DPW technology, anything relating to asphalt and maintenance of roads, sanitation truck, and strategy relating to vehicles. In other words, there are many vehicles listed here. So what would be your priorities and what would be the strategy for replacement? And also look into what other opportunities there are for funding some of these things that you would request from the council. Okay. All right. Is there anything else in the DPW area that you would like him to focus on? Vice President Ludwig.
I heard us talk about the sanitation truck, but there's also an additional sanitation item that was listed in here, the compactor, I believe, for the 77K. So as I know, this is my tagline every budget season. So as costs rise at the landfill and it costs us more to dump the same amount of garbage, is this an item that could help us with that request?
That's exactly what it's for. It's also the wear and tear on 4 trash trucks going up.
Getting up the hill to dump the trash. I'd like to ask if we could please consider that. That would be a savings on future cost to the landfill.
I will say my note on that was, I don't understand this product. So hearing more about it would be great.
I think the hang up on that is where it's going to be placed and done. Is that correct? We've been talking about where composting is going to be done.
Compactor.
Compactor. Oh, we also need composting too.
Yeah, the other one, we're talking about saving money.
Another night, y'all. It's not even on here.
Okay, moving on to Parks and Recreation. There are 13 requests here. It sounds reasonable that we would ask Ms. Blumenthal to come in, but where would you like her to focus her attention? Mr. LeBlanc.
I am 100% in favor of neighborhood playgrounds. We are a bedroom community. When people ask me where they can take their kids in this town at a brand new playground or something relatively new, I actually don't know where to send them other than maybe check behind one of the schools. I would really, I know in my area in particular, there used to be a playground and now it's just the metal poles that used to have swings on them. They don't even have swings. So it's a little depressing to look at. And I think that since we are a bedroom community, I think it would be appreciated, just like the bridge getting painted. I think a lot of people appreciated that as well.
Okay, other comments? Mrs. Shockley?
I would want to hear more from Director Blumenthal, just because of the fact that many of these projects she put on here could have grant funding behind them. And it seems to be dependent on how many we do. I would like to focus on playground deserts. She mentioned something about that. So areas of our town that don't have a playground where, kids also in many cases don't have a backyard. the idea of a community playground is very attractive because it's a way of bringing in revenue. Something she doesn't have on here, and just because I know it's so widely used, is the Foster Field parking lot and fields, because I can tell you that when those fields are used for middle school sports, there are no lines. I did have a point where I didn't think I would get out without hitting someone's car. And so I think something like that, especially when so many students come here in middle school, see that field and that parking lot, and probably decide right then and there that Coventry is not the high school they're going to. So it's so utilized on such a regular basis that I do feel like doing something at Foster Field, whether it's this project or not. And it brings me to a longer term plan where if we were going to use a location for a community playground, would we also want our recreation center to be there as opposed to putting a bunch of money into the current community center? So the parking lots and things like that, I feel are really important because those fields are so utilized by local athletes. But a lot of this goes into a longer term plan too, kind of going back to what was said earlier. And do we want to build a large community playground and not have that be a main location in town for the community center? So there's just a lot with the ranges in funding that I would like to hear more about. And I would also like to hear her wish list in order because of the fact that she knows these areas so much better than we do on a recreation basis.
Okay, so far I'm hearing playgrounds, Foster Field, parking. What is the long-term plan, just as we mentioned about a long-term facilities plan and her priority list? Okay, anything else? Mrs. Lima.
Also 100% in on playgrounds. I feel like if that has to be something that comes out of this, but overall, I would love to see what some kind of packaged scenarios would be, because I think one of the notes in all of these, when it came to playgrounds, basketball courts, tennis courts, multi-sport courts, was if you package some of these together, you can maximize the incentive and the reimbursement in terms of when you're putting matching dollars as a town. And I just think it would be awesome if there was a way that we could package this all together and say for 1 or 1.5 million, you could do this entire package of just reinvigoration and investment into your almost your entire town's recreation facilities. I think that would be a huge win for this town. The other thing is, much like for Mr. McGee, I'd love to see priority, ROI, and fleet maintenance in terms of the many requests that she made as well for pieces of equipment for her department. I think that the Payne Field lights is something we need to have a conversation about. That's a huge expense, but also it's a field that brings in money to the town. I'm pretty sure we have leagues that rent that. And so we want to make sure that we're providing a facility that would continue to bring in money to the town. With the parking lot and maybe addition to Foster, I remember distinctly being at many events outside the community center in the past year and watching people trip and almost fall in the potholes and cracks in that parking lot. So I think it's a safety hazard and would be worth the investment, but because it's $20K, maybe it's a CIP item instead. And then again, my note with the community center roof and flooring, I would like to see more facilities master planning and understanding placemaking in that respect.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ludwig?
One thing I've had many residents ask me about is dog park. I would like to hear a little bit about the dog park idea. I mean, that has been something that, we've had people come in to the council and talk about the dog park idea in public comment sessions in terms of their involvement with Charter Review Committee. So I know Mr. Copley's come in and talked about that before. So I know that there's lots of residents who have talked about something like this. I'd at least like to hear about how we could do something like that. It sounds like it would be off of possibly Sandy Bottom. I wasn't completely sure where the location was that she's referencing. I think it's across the street from the Bead Sting. I think
it's the first clearing on the left when you're going southbound City.
Okay. So I would like to hear that if possible. It doesn't have to be long, but lots of residents have asked me about that. I know there's a couple of requests in here for equipment. I would prefer equipment go in some sort of CIP plan or annual budgeting, and ARPA money be used for infrastructure items. So I don't need to hear personally about those. I think they're important. I'd love to hear about them during the budget cycle, but I'd like to focus on infrastructure related items for the ARPA funds.
Okay. Miss Emma, do you have more?
Yes, I'm trying to hold my comments. I think someone said this earlier. There are so many requests in here for playground equipment. I can't figure out the packaging either. So if she could package it in some way for us and say, here's the 3 top projects that I think would have the biggest impact across Coventry. And this is the package that it would provide. I think that would help me because here's the thing. I know all of us are going to have a really hard time voting for something in, to Councilor LeBlanc's point, like the neighborhood playgrounds. I'm going to have a really hard time voting for a playground only in your district. And if Raina,
I was just giving you an example.
yes, no. I'm saying, I understand why you're going to want to do that. And I'm going to want to do that. And everyone up here is going to want to do that. If it can be packaged in a way that we see some physical dispersity amongst where those items are at, I think I'll have an easier time approving that.
100% agree with you. Same thing with the paving.
With the what?
The paving.
With the paving. Yes. So, yes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
So it sounds like this list for Ms. Blumenthal is quite long, involves quite a few topics. You probably will need 20 minutes, I would guess.
Yeah, and I'll talk to her about prioritization and packaging.
I think.
I mean, there's a bigger conversation around every single one of these
There
requests, and we don't have a master plan, comprehensive CIP, how we're going to work it all in, how they dovetail, what grants are available. We have 2 different value sets that are fighting against each other. One is to have the whole plan together and take the time to plan, and the time limit on spending the ARPA funds. So the first priority is spend the ARPA funds, get it all spent as fast as we can. And then what we don't spend it on, we're going to work on CIP and long-term planning.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next category is economic development. There are 2 requests by Ms. Bosworth, who is the chair. One is for a consultant, and one is for, it sounds like approved funding and sponsorship for an event focused on our community. Any comments on either of these 2 requests? Mrs. Lima.
I hate to be the bearer of tough love, but knowing that this committee struggles to get a quorum, I'm reluctant to want to consider these requests because it's a lot of money to give a committee that hasn't been able to regularly get a quorum to meet last that I knew. They're both great ideas and I agree with them at a base level, but my concern is if we don't have a dedicated team to carry out these 2 ideas and these programs, and then it becomes another thing on the backs of administration and their to-do list. That's my concern. So.
Okay, other questions? Ms. Ludwig.
The sewer subcommittee had a tough time making a quorum for many times. We came up with some great ideas that we went forward with. So I just want to throw out here that while the committee itself has not always made a quorum, the ideas have been discussed. The funding itself would not go towards any members on that committee. No, I didn't say that. I'm just clarifying my point here. The funds would be used for a possible town event related to economic development. And that's kind of what we've tasked the people that are on the committee on, finding ways to engage the community, economic development for our small businesses in town. I know I've heard different counselors talk about some type of community event or fireworks in the past. And this was something that we thought, if we could use ARPA money and do it one time, yes, it would need to be facilitated by town staff. But if that's successful, we could build it into the annual budget process. So I just want to throw out kind of food for thought here, because not having every detail of how this event will run, this was just the request for funding, because it would likely cost approximately this much money for fireworks, all of the associated personnel that come with safety, things like that. But yes, it would be something we'd have to prioritize on the town side, the town manager side, to figure out who from the town we could work with. The committee itself would not be in charge of hiring all the vendors. The EDC would be more in charge of socializing the plan, trying to reach out to local businesses, encouraging participation, but they would not be, the expectation is not that they would be running the event. So, and for full transparency, I'm on the EDC as well. So my expectation is not that they would run it either, that town staff would. So we'd of course have to prioritize with Mr. Marchant if we funded this.
Thank you. My comment is that I think that we've been talking about economic development in this town for a very, very long time, and we have not been able to get any momentum. And I remember that the chairperson and the vice chairperson came to us and made a presentation how they were going to get together gift cards that could be used at any businesses in town, especially for the Christmas season, the holiday season, and that we want to spotlight businesses that have been in town for 40 years or more. And I sent them a list of about 15 companies. These projects are not relatively simple, but they're pretty easy to carry out, and nothing has been done. So I'm concerned about putting money toward a consultant unless there is some assurance that there will be a way to facilitate any recommendations that the consultant would bring forth. So, I mean, there's no point in us hiring consultants for whatever it is that we've been doing and not being able to carry through. So I'm very concerned about the ability of the group at this point in time to carry through. I would like to see.
Just to confirm, point of order here, that is not what Councilor Lima and I were just referencing. We were talking about the event, not about the second request.
Right. And I'm talking about the first request.
Okay. So just for clarity, if you could make sure everyone understands that, because I think there's also an element here that you're disagreeing and saying, oh, we're going to do the gift cards and do some salute to businesses that have been here for 40 years. That was not the EDC's recommendation.
It was, they came up and
No,
talked about
no, it was not.
Who was it?
That was yours, President Dixon.
No, I didn't say gift cards. Okay.
Rather than getting into it, that was not an EDC recommendation to celebrate businesses that have been in town for many, many years. That was a request from the council, a counselor, to the EDC. The EDC could not make that go forward because none of us could help them with contacts, because there's no business contact list for the town. So I just want to be really clear here. The EDC is not facilitating the specific projects. The EDC was put together, and what we've been focused on is finding ideas that we want to bring to the council and see if it's something that we want to execute at the admin level. The marketing item, your comment there is totally relevant and separate from the event in the first request that I was talking about. So thank you for allowing me to understand that.
Thank you. Yes, I did bring forth the idea that we could celebrate businesses, and they were presented with about a list of about 15 companies with contact information. However, the business about gift cards and some of the other ideas that they had were brought forth by the committee. But when you have a small committee, it's very difficult to follow through. I'm just concerned about the ability to follow through on any kind of recommendations that a consultant would come up with in order to make it worthwhile to spend $50,000 or whatever it would take to hire a consultant. So what would you like to hear any presentations by the Economic Development Commission? Yes.
So I feel that as a counselor, I have put a lot of people on a lot of committees, and I'm constantly asking more people to join committees. And we never really provide much to our committees. We don't get, of all the committees we have, this one asked for some funds in order to do some work that is related to their committee. Now, the study that was done on the roads, I feel quickly utilizing that study, because we're already years behind, is very important. So I'm glad that we have these funds in order to at least start this project and maybe have residents say, yes, it is important to put capital money into our budget on an annual basis because we see what's gotten done and how much money it costs. I feel like the economic development consultant services could be something that we could do for when we're able to use it. So we don't typically have $50,000 that we could spend on something like this, but our town, like you said, President Dixon, really requires more of a plan for what to do with economic development, as opposed to just, we need more, which seems to be all anyone says, but anytime a business comes in, it's the wrong business and we should be doing something different. And I won't say I disagree. I feel like if we could utilize these one-time funds to have this consultant tell us what we should be doing, if we were able to focus on it, get an other towns have economic development staff. If we were to get a staff member at some point, we would have this work already there for them so that they could look at, okay, this is what this consultant feels this town should start with as a basis for how to get their economic development off the ground. So I do feel as if we have $50,000 available, it would be a great product to have to help us move forward when we have additional funds to put into it. It's good to have something on the shelf that created a plan. Like I said, there are some things like the paving of our roads that needs to get done now that we have the plan. But this might be something that we can have there for when we're able to take off with it. I also feel that for the money it is, as much as, people are going to complain much more than they show that they're happy, being able to take some of this $9.7 million just to bring a day's worth of joy, I do like that idea of being able to say to the residents of Coventry, hey, you've been asking for a fireworks display for years, or, hey, we have the money this year to show you what a community event could look like. Do you want us to budget for it every year now? It's instead of saying, we're going to throw $50,000 into our budget to do a community event and maybe it's a flop. This way, if we do have the funds available, I can't say I can make this a top priority to do a summer bash, but if we have the funds that were given to us freely available, I would love to do something just for the residents of Coventry, like a quick win. So I don't dislike the idea of it. I don't need to hear a presentation on it. If we can, we should. But I do think the idea of utilizing this money to get, economic development consulting services, it could be a really good plan for the future.
Okay, does anyone want Ms. Bosworth to come in? I don't hear any affirmatives.
I would like to.
You would?
But I don't want to waste her time. If I'm the only one who thinks that this is something worth doing.
So I'll second you on having her or someone from EDC come in and chat with us. I'm so close to it. That's why I don't personally need a presentation on it, but
the rest may need it, the public. Mrs. Lima.
So I just want to clarify my point. I don't want anyone who's on the ADC to be offended. I guess my larger point is, given how many needs this town has and the fact that there's so much deferred maintenance and it's just, yes, do we need economic development and these kinds of efforts? And would I love to have fireworks on Lake Tyoke and have businesses come together? Absolutely. But my issue is, if we were a town that had its what together and we were on top of our maintenance and our fleet maintenance and our facilities, then to me, we could afford to make this more of a priority. So that's just my opinion. Again, not trying to cast aspersions or insult the EDC. It was more so just there's a difference between putting money towards an item for purchase or a project than conceptualizing and planning and policy. So.
Okay, we have a couple of people, two council members who would like to have Ms. Bosworth come in. Mr. LeBlanc, how do you feel about this?
I mean, I would love fireworks. I've been saying that for years. But I just think that there's more pressing issues at the moment. That's all.
I agree. Okay. What we can do is we're going to have presentations next week. If time permits, we can always have some of these people come back at another meeting. This is not the final decision. Okay. Next category is fire departments. There are 14 requests. Is there any interest in having any of these requesters come in at all? Mr. LeBlanc.
I know that they've already presented to us. I am in full support of giving the fire departments some of this money. They were the main ones impacted and during this pandemic. And that's the main reason why we got these funds. So I personally think it's less of a presentation from them because we have already had one. It's more of coming up with an equitable amount that we want to give them. So I don't need a presentation though, but I want to make sure that some of these funds go to them.
So an equitable amount, meaning, for example, maybe I'll just throw out a number, $25,000 to each department, and they can do with it what they want, or it had to be put particularly toward one of these requests.
I would hope it'd be a little more than that.
I typically put it.
I hear you. I just think we as a council need to come up with an amount that we want to designate to fire districts. Clearly there's a need, which is probably going to be less than the full amount that they're asking for. I just want to come up with an equitable way of distribution.
So I'm hearing that there's no need for any presentations to be made. Is that correct?
Could they have someone available for questions if needed? If that's not an inconvenience?
So that's certainly possible.
No presentation.
Oh, well, the issue with that is if we don't have it on the agenda, then we can't discuss it.
Yeah.
So if you want to discuss it, then we should have it on the agenda because we're going to have to list out every item we're going to discuss.
Totally agree with that statement. I'm just saying I don't need a presentation from multiple different people from multiple different fire districts. I want to give them money. I think we just need to come up with an amount. So I think it should be on the agenda for discussion.
So really, this is part of the three-stage process. One, we're going to say, here are the projects we know nothing about or not enough about that you want presentations on. On the 17th, you get the information. Just because you didn't get a presentation on it doesn't mean you don't want to commit funds to it. And so when you come back on the 24th, hopefully, or maybe you need more time than the 24th, but hopefully we're working towards a decision where we're ready to put some money down on these 10 projects and move forward.
Okay. So do we want any presentations by any of these people? I'm hearing no, because we have information. Is that correct?
No, I would second what Mr. LeBlanc said. I would be more in favor of looking at lump sum amounts to each district and not being so much project based.
Okay, so we can put on the agenda a discussion of allocations of funds toward the fire districts without particular presentations being made. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, Mrs. Shockley.
Just to make sure I didn't miss anything and I can go back to my packet if I did Western not reach out?
I didn't see anything.
Okay, because I feel as if they had come initially.
I will double check my emails to see if that just got overlooked in the packet. And if it is there, I'll send it out to everyone. But I do remember getting.
And I'll be honest, I didn't look at past emails. I looked at your report,
which was supposed to be conclusive, but I'll double check.
Okay, perfect. I just didn't want to not include Western in if we're going to give allocations of money. I want to make sure that.
Case in point, I did add 2 requests after the deadline, and so my memo didn't match the total number of.
I noticed, but that's okay.
Okay, now we're on to community. There were 2 requests, one from the Western Rhode Island Civic Historic Society and one from a community member. Is there interest in hearing about the fire alarm building repairs that are needed and also requests by the for Station Street storm drainage. Vice President Ludwig.
So on the Coventry alarm building, so just as a reminder, so I think it was less than a year ago, I believe, that we, in essence, signed over the building from the town to the society. They've been doing a lot of amazing work there. In order for them to, two things, I know that they were hit hard by COVID. As everyone is, your numbers go down, the number of people donating goes down, et cetera. So they've made a commitment to the town that they are going to upkeep this building and do the best they can. And this is an infrastructure type of project on a building that we've literally just given them that would be instrumental in keeping this a fire alarm building and keeping it for its original purpose. It sounds small. We've been looking at $1 million requests. So I know this is a much smaller number, but it is something that they need to make sure that building doesn't continue decaying.
And through conversations I've had with Ms. Jacob, I think they believe that they could take over the building and do the minimum or minor repairs. And they discovered that there were many more structural problems that they did not anticipate, and one of being the roof and window replacements, et cetera. So do you want to hear from Ms. Jacobs or not at this point in time? Mr. LeBlanc?
For me, we did give them a free building. So we've already given them substantial, in my opinion, and they were willing to take on the liability when they accepted that building. So I feel like you're setting a interesting precedent if we then once we give them the building, we'll repair X, Y, and Z after we gave it to you. But nonetheless, it is a nonprofit. I understand that they got hit hard. So I would be willing to listen to it at least, but I'm just saying we did give them a free building.
Mrs. Lima?
I'd be willing to listen just because she took the time to put together the request. She's a member of the community and puts a lot of time and effort into our community and bringing people together. So I'll listen, but yeah, this one's a tough one.
Mrs. Shockley?
I think we asked our community members to give us their ideas and very few did. I really respect those who reached out, who came up with proposals, who came up with pricing. They didn't ask us for $1 million. They asked us for 58,000 on a regular budget. I'd be like, no, I don't want to look at it. But for these funds at this time, yeah, I do want to hear from her. And then because we're in that section, I would say, well, I want this resident to have his say. Should we have Director McGee speak about Station Street storm drainage? Because I don't know if this person knew the actual costs of what this would be, or if they just put in a number. Maybe we have more background about that. But I do know Station Street's a very well-traveled street, leads to a lot of neighborhoods, leads to our school. So I would like to know more about this project and why a resident thinks it's so important.
So, Mr. McGee, could you possibly talk with Mr. Marchand about getting more information about this particular request? And then we can determine what kind of presentation we might hear.
By all means.
Thank you so much. All right, we got through this list. Our town clerk was very busy. You got everything down?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. All right. Moving on to the next agenda item. Authorizing the town manager to execute a purchase and sales contract between Gary C. Grassett and Nancy E. Grassett, seller, and the town of Coventry, Rhode Island buyer. The buyer agrees to buy that certain parcel of vacant land containing approximately 15 1/2 acres, more or less, located west of Mumford Street and identified as Coventry Tax Assessors Plat 95, Lot 96.1 for the purchase price of $150,000. May I have a motion and second to approve the resolution?
Can I ask a? Okay.
What?
Oh, nothing. I'll wait.
Okay. May I have a motion and second?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Gorham, do you have a question or a discussion point?
Just a couple of issues associated with the property. I wrote a memo for the land trust about a year ago on this property, and there's nowhere to park on the property, and so the land trust was exploring purchasing the Boxtail property, which is the lot next door. It's lot 15, I believe. This is lot number 96.1, I believe this lot is. So the problem with the Boxtail purchase is that it has a dam associated with it.
Yeah.
And when you buy a dam, you take all the responsibility. This town paid $700,000 for a piece of property in 2007. And it's got a failing dam on it, and we're going to have to pay to fix it. So this was red flagged. Now this is, but that was the Boxtail purchase. I don't know what happened to Boxtail, but if the whole thing is premised on acquiring the Boxtail property, it would be good to know what happened with that. In other words, are they buying 96.1 only to also want to buy number 15 to the north, which is the Boxtail property, which has the dam, which could be a whole mess of trouble if it has a dam on it.
Okay.
My memo said that the land trust was trying to find a way to have Boxtail carve out the dam from the purchase. So that was just the other thing is, I don't know if a survey's been done of this property. I think that's usually a good practice. The DEM always does that when it buys large pieces of property. And I don't know if there's an appraisal on this either. It's $150,000. And that's all I have to say. Just want to raise those issues, which were raised quite some time ago with the land trust.
So it sounds like it might be appropriate to table this pending further information.
Yeah,
Would that be your recommendation?
Well, yeah, because these are issues that are associated with the property. Yes.
Okay. Other comments? Mrs. Lima.
If I remember correctly, I think conversation around this included, I remember Mr. Gorham kind of alluded to it, buying the property, but cutting out the area with the dam and the purchase. And then also, I don't remember any conversation about having the parking area down where the dam is. I do remember conversation about parking in the neighborhood that abuts it. And it would be a weirdly shaped parking lot and then have a right-of-way access next to somebody's home or the seller to get to the property, if I remember correctly. So if we can clarify that when we get more information, that would be great. The other piece too, I know it's really small, but if we can also, I don't know if it might be separate from the purchase and sales, but have in writing who's going to be maintaining the parking lot and the trails of this, because I don't want to be dealing with the same kind of issues I deal with right-of-ways in around Tyoke Lake, where nobody really knows which ones are maintained by DPW, were they Parks and Rec? Is it the responsibility of the homeowners that abut the right? So the land trust has said that they'll do it if they're able to and have the time and the staff and the people. So I just want to make sure that's clear as well, because I know that our staff for Parks and Rec and DPW is already very strapped for time and resources and equipment. So just those items.
Okay, Mr. LeBlanc.
I just want to thank Solicitor Gorham for raising those, because I think those are extremely valid reasons to table this. So I'll make a motion to table.
I'll second his motion, but I would also ask that someone from the Conservation Committee be here when we talk about this, or the Land Trust, I apologize, be here for when we discuss this again, so that possibly some of these questions could have been answered tonight if that was the case.
I apologize. I just saw this on the agenda tonight and it struck me, Gaffney property, That's something I knew something about. And I hope the land trust can wait 2 weeks. I don't want to just blame them though. I wish I'd seen it sooner and I could have brought it up, got the information, but that did not happen. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table this. I would recommend that we table it till October 24th because they've come to us quite a few months ago about this proposal. Mr. Marchand, well, first of all, we'll take a vote. We have a motion and a second to table. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion is tabled until October 24th. And Mr. Marchand, could you just work with Mr. Gorham to determine the responses to these questions so that we have them answered?
Yep.
All right, next, reference pages 65 to 66, change the voting status of the following. School committee member from non-voting to voting, Amy Anzalone. May I have a motion and second to approve the change in voting status?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Ludwig?
So we've actually had this agenda item and actually the next one on more than one agenda now.
3 times.
3 times. What information do we have from our solicitors that would help the council make an informed decision here?
Mr. Gorham, you have spoken with Mr. D'Agostino.
Yeah, well, he wrote a letter. He served it to the town council on September 28th. You can appoint both the 4 and 5. And that's it. I don't know what else to suggest. It's your call. Certainly it's allowed under the governing law, our charter, and then it's the additional slots that are suggested by the State of Rhode Island Department of Education. Their regulations provide for additional appointments. So I think they're in fact complementary. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. In this particular case, town charter has been satisfied, but there are some additions that are being made to it because that's what the state wants. And never forget, the state has the money. So that's really the best direction I can give. I brought a copy of the letter that Mr. D'Agostino sent to the members of the council. Absolutely willing to answer any questions you may have about that.
I think Mr. D'Agostino told us that neither the charter nor RIGL speak or is silent on voting status, and he recommended that everyone have a voting status. Mr. D'Agostino, except for the charter recommendation that the superintendent and the legal counsel ex officio. That I believe was in his letter to us.
Let me just.
Is there a question, Mrs. Lima?
Yes. I just want to clarify that this has nothing to do with whether Amy would be great as a voting member. She's already a very valued member of this committee, and and to make clear, Mr. Gorham, we've already satisfied RIDE's requirements and our charter requirements with this committee. So making Amy a voting member and adding Kristen Benoit to make it an odd voting number is all gravy. So at this point, it's just a matter of principle, whether or not you care to abide by your own town's charter. I absolutely am against making every single member of the committee a voting member. People who are employees of the town and not residents should not have a say in that respect. Amy's a unique case. She's a resident of Coventry. Kristen, of course, is a Coventry resident, would be an elector of the town type seat. So, but I just want to make that very clear that the administrators should not have a voting say, nor should Mr. Marchand or the finance department or any of those, or Russ Hill from facilities, that wouldn't make any sense. And I would guarantee you many of them, if not all of them, would not want to have that voting power. So what this all boils down to is principle. Do you want to just add voting members because there's people that said they want to be voting members, or do you care to follow the charter? That's my biggest question. At the end of the day, I just want to move forward, and I want to stop dragging the names of these folks on an agenda week after week after week. And I want to just put this to bed tonight. But that's the piece here, is that we've already fulfilled the RIGL requirements and the charter requirements as the committee currently stands, without making Amy a voting member, without adding Kristen Benoit as an elector of the town.
Right now, we're taking one motion at a time. And the first one is to change the voting status.
I'm going to withdraw my motion because I agree with the sentiment that I think I made the motion, right?
But can't we keep the motion and just vote on it?
Yeah.
Like, why are we taking it off again? Is it something that is never going to come back on the table?
I'm gonna withdraw my motion because I agree with what Councilor Lima just said, in that we have fulfilled, in my opinion, based off of what we've heard from legal, we have fulfilled the current charter and the RIGL requirements. And if we're going to look at, based off of what we want, like, do we want to add extra members or not? I don't see the benefit at this point in adding additional members. We've met the criteria of the charter. We've met the criteria of RIGL. So I'm not seeing the benefit of adding either member. So to vote individually on them, I don't want to create an embarrassing situation here. I don't want to vote no on either of these wonderful people.
You can't vote yes on one without voting yes.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm simply withdrawing my motion because I don't think we need any other members at this point. And I'm not interested in continuing this discussion week after week after week. I'm not going to table anything. Well, let me think about that. Tabling it would take it off. I might consider that. I'm going to withdraw my motion because I am not going to vote on Ms. Anzalone. If I'm making a motion, I'll withdraw my motion.
The other motion has to do with Ms. Benoit, and we do need an elector. We are short an elector. So that's why she's on it.
No, we're not. No, I'd like to.
The list.
I'm not going to look at a list.
Okay.
I have multiple times offline. I know this is a frustrating environment here for just a few minutes. I have expressed in open session, I have expressed offline that we have already met the charter and the RIGL requirements. I don't know why we keep having to come back to all of this. I don't find it necessary at this point to continue doing that. We've met the requirements. We have enough.
Yes.
We have enough people, enough voting members. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm going on and on, but it is kind of annoying. So I'm not going to look at the list.
Okay.
I'm going to say, I believe we have 9 voting members. The only stipulation at this point is the one piece of the charter, I believe, that we did not double check, that personally I did not check, was whether or not we have at least, what is it called? Bipartisan. So do we, and I think we do, because you're a registered independent, correct, President?
I am.
So I think we even meet that. That was my only one open question for tonight. So I'm going to withdraw my motion, and I don't want to vote on, I'm just going to say, I don't want to vote on either of these ladies, because it's not because of them, but because I think we already meet all of the requirements. So maybe someone can consider what Councilor Lima has said, what I've said, and see whether or not you'd like to make the motion yourself or a motion to table.
Then I'll make a motion to change the voting status just so we can vote and end this discussion one way or the other. We have a motion and we have a second.
No, we don't.
I believe Mrs. Chuck.
She has to remotion it, right?
If we can just take this off the table without voting no, I would prefer that as well. Just
okay.
It's off.
So
I'm not against it. I just don't believe it will pass, and I don't want to vote no in the same way that the other council members do not.
Okay, so we're not tabling it. We're just not discussing this. I think we have to table it. Is that correct, Mr. Gorham?
What happens is that fails for lack of a motion and second.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
There are 9 ways to get there, but you've already made it. It's obvious.
Okay.
Just one last point, if I may. The other piece of this too is we're moving very fast on this committee, and we're already up past our elbows in terms of concepts with the architect. And I would feel bad bringing Kristen in at this point when she probably hasn't been watching all of the meetings and she hasn't been privy to the conversation and direction that we're already headed. Granted, we're not incredibly far in, but I think to add someone who hasn't been in the mix to this point would also be not setting her up for success. And that's another point I just want to bring up.
Can I just add one last legal point?
Yes.
The 1999 amendment to the charter added the bipartisan requirement into the charter for this committee. And we could not find ratification by the General Assembly of those charter amendments, probably because I can't explain why.
We already made it, right?
Well, let me finish the thought, and I'm bringing it up so that will be addressed. I believe you do meet it in any event, but because it wasn't ratified by the General Assembly, I don't think, as long as you've met the criteria for the state provisions, which you have, I don't think it's an issue. But even if it were, I want to be on record as saying, I believe that having, unaffiliated, and I think there are 3 members of another party, of an actual party, I think that's bipartisan enough. That is my opinion. And it all is going to end up being part of the question that goes to the voters anyway.
Correct.
The General Assembly will create that as a piece of legislation that creates an election and a process. And so I don't see any grave danger in the bipartisan issue. It's a nice thing to have, but if you don't have it, I think you do have it. But even if you didn't, I'm not so sure that it would be of any consequence to the efficacy of the effort made by this committee to identify and build new schools. That's it.
Okay, thank you. The next motion is for Christian Benoit, and what I'm hearing is that there will be no motion in a second. Okay, so I will just list the electors that we have appointed. Number 1, Ann Dixon. Number 2, Kristen Danusis. Number 3, Christine Kennedy. And number 4, Alita Hall. We have 4 electors. We need 5.
No.
Why not?
9 voting members are what we have. Hillary Lima, Town Council member. Number 1, Kim Shockley, Town Council member. Number 2, Anna Dos Reis Kutu, School Committee member. 3, James Pearson, School Committee member. 4, Christine Kennedy, Elector of the Town. 5, Kristen Danusis, Elector of the Town. 6, Alita Hall, Elector of the Town with architectural engineering experience. 7, Ann Dixon, Elector of the Town, Town Council. 8, Kristen Bagley, School Principal, Western Coventry Elementary School. 9. Those are 9 voting members.
But I believe that we need 5 electors. Isn't that correct by the charter?
Yeah, according to the charter, you need 5 electors.
Are me, Kim, and Ann not electors of the town?
No,
James Pearson is.
Named 7 of them, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, or 8. Actually, I think 8. That's 8 elected people of the
Yeah.
town.
Is there anyone who's not?
Kristen Bagley, principal at Western.
I
No,
think you can be an elector, I think you can be an elector and a member of the town council.
Yep.
So you're still an elector. So I think it's superfluous. Maybe that's the word. So I think everyone is okay.
Okay, so we're going to count when it says 5 electors, some of the members of the council to fill those roles also. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we got that settled now. All right, I will so notify Kristen and Amy of the deliberations this evening. Okay. Public comment. Members of the public, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand, be recognized by the president. Come to the podium, state your name and address. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? Is there any member on Zoom? We have one person. Please speak your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Longo, 5 Autumn Ridge Road, Coventry.
Your comment, please. Welcome.
I have a question about the budget presented tonight with the actuals dated June 30th. It's page 47 of the agenda.
Yes.
My question is, I see that the 2021 numbers have changed as compared to the 23 town council budget adopted on June 27th. Specifically, total expenditures actuals for 2021 now show 107 million expenses. And on June 27th, we were reported that the actuals for 2021 was 112 million for expenditures, roughly 5 million more. So I was wondering what causes that change to what we would have assumed would have been set in cement.
Can someone respond to that question? Mr. Marchand?
I don't have the information on hand. I can look it up. I do recall after going through the 2021 budget as we were preparing the 22 budget that the school had received a good deal of grants and federal aid that took them above and beyond their budgeted budget. And those funds were received and spent. So that would be reflected in that number. And that's why that prior year number could be higher than the subsequent year number. But I'll look into that to confirm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions?
No, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for staying so late with us. We appreciate your staying on Zoom with us this evening. Any other comments by members of the public or members who are on Zoom? Okay, may I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting at 9:56?
I'll make so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
President Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion is adjourned at 9:56.
Cheating.